Congratulations. Thank you. So exciting. Thank you. Thank you for your card. That was my opinion. They always do it. I literally was on Reddit at the same time. I watched this one and I was stuck in the basement. Or you know the live stream. Congratulations. I'm so happy. Welcome back. It's a really nice surprise to see when I read the minutes to the agenda. Every day a little better. Thanks.
Spread the word down the way.
I'm just glad that we're doing this. So Dennis. Yeah, man, the we love it. I'm lucky to have you back.
Welcome back.
Will everyone please rise for the pledge and then remain standing for a moment of silence?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As you can see, the Board of Education is attempting to return to some form of public meeting, which is also compliant within the limits set forth by the governor's executive orders and the guidelines of the CDC and Department of Health. We must limit the number of people permitted to be physically present as a part of our compliance with those obligations. Perhaps the most important item for our meeting tonight is a public discussion about the reopening plan for September. As it pertains to the plan, we hope to have answers to most of your questions as part of the presentation, but may also need time for the administration to research an issue on occasion. You can always email the superintendent with the question as well. I am also aware that some attendees may wish to speak about matters related to conversations that occurred on social media and the role of the Board of Education in that regard. If you wish to speak, please be sure to fill out a card and give it to the district clerk. There will be 2 opportunities for public to speak at this meeting. The first is limited to comments relating to agenda items only. We will then move through the agenda. After we complete the agenda items, a second opportunity for public comment about non-agenda items will be provided. I ask that all present please be reminded to be respectful of one another, the administration, and the board. Also, the opportunity for public comment is just that, public comment. The Board of Education will not engage in debate or back and forth with the public during the period of public comment. In an attempt to provide all who wish to speak an opportunity to do so, our policy limits comments to 3 minutes. There may be people who wish to speak who have been left outside due to space limitations. Please ask security stationed at the doors for a card and they will bring it in to the clerk. Again, while we respect the community and we always want to provide people with the opportunity to be heard, if things devolve into personal insult or invective, as the president, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. I thank you all in advance for your cooperation. To start tonight's meeting, Mrs. Hines and Mr. O'Keefe are going to make a presentation about our reentry plan.
Sure. Ms. Florio, could you fire up the cameras for us? All right, just give us a moment while we wait for that. And while we're doing that, I'd also like to apologize to those from watching from home, because unfortunately, obviously from that distance, you're not really going to be able to see our screen. So for that, we're very sorry. Unfortunately, the limitations of how many people are in the room, had we been able to move it to an auditorium, we certainly would have done that. But we're limited to a total of 50 people or 50% of a room's capacity, whichever number is lower. So unfortunately, we're at that 50 capacity in this room this evening. This document we're going to show tonight, again, is another evolving document. Back on the 31st, we placed the district's plan on the website as required by state law. That plan had to talk about 3 different models for return, which it did. Since the plan was posted on the website, you may have seen additional commentary from our governor where he has since changed some of the parameters, such as offering additional opportunities for choice for family and or for staff. So we need to take those things into consideration. So again, this document and the presentation you're going to see this evening is the most accurate as of now, but it by far is not completed. At the conclusion of tonight's meeting and this presentation, you're going to get a copy of this presentation emailed to you through the school messenger system. It'll also be up on social media and it'll be up on our website. You're also going to receive an invitation to participate in a survey regarding choice. It's a follow-up to the survey that we sent out last week where we asked potential preferences. This one's going to need to be more definitive, where we actually need to know which families are looking to have their children receive instruction at home versus those that are willing to send children to school. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Ms. Hines to start us off.
Thank you, Mr. O'Keefe. So this morning, we actually concluded and had our last committee meeting, which culminated in the plan that we're going to be sharing with you tonight. And as Mr. O'Keefe said, all of the community members will be receiving at 8 o'clock a phone call to this manner, and also the plan and the survey for remote learning. I just want to thank all of the folks that were on that committee with us. We are made up of several community members, unit leaders, staff of all sorts, and it really has been a pleasure to work with everybody. Excuse me one second while I get this on. Okay, so after a tremendous amount of feedback that we received from our survey from our community, and given the lengthy documents that we have given out and the models over the past few months, I can happily say that we are able to offer a full return for our elementary students, K-5, as well as a full return for our students with disabilities, our special class, which would be our 15-1 classes, our 12-1 classes, and our 8-1 students. And at the secondary level, due to size and the fact that because we will need to reappropriate space at both levels, elementary and secondary, we will have to move forward with a hybrid model for grades 6 to 12. And that will be an A-B schedule based on alpha and household. The reason why we were able to offer a full return for our elementary school is because Mr. O'Keefe and myself and our instructional directors and our director for facilities and the building principal began walkthroughs last week. We walked through each and every room in our buildings to space and measure out 6 feet. On the average, we are able to fit about 17 students in a class. Now, again, please know that we have scheduled a full return with our total population. So with any remote instruction, that would diminish the amount of students coming into our schools. So we would actually have even more room. Because of the reappropriation of space, we needed about 1 extra section or 1 extra grade level, K-5 at each building generally. So we are going to be utilizing space in our libraries, in our arts, in our music rooms, and other common areas, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. Remote learning is something that, as you know, last week it was confirmed that we will, as districts, need to be offering this to our students as well. This will be a parent choice and a consent. Tonight at 8 o'clock, again, when you receive that plan, there will be a survey in there, and we ask that only parents who are looking to remotely instruct their child fill out this survey. And it is due, it is a fast turnaround, by Friday. We need to be able to staff and schedule the remaining students that we have coming into our schools. Remote learning, again, that is by a parent's choice with consent, and no, at this time, it is a decision for the entirety of the 2021 school year. I say this now because based on the number of possible staff who may also look for accommodations, that might mean staff members staying home in conjunction with our students. We need to match up to see if we have enough staff members who are going to be able to offer remote instruction, or should we have to look towards live streaming if we do not have enough certificated staff that matches up with the number of students. And so, therefore, we would not have possibly a physical space for students to come back to if that were the case. Should, of course, all restrictions be lifted through the governor's office, then we would have to, and hopefully would have a little bit of time in between, we would just have to restructure and reschedule to ensure that all students are able to return. Remote instruction will entail, it is not like being in-person school, and it is not distance learning. Distance learning is only going to be offered if, again, we are ordered by the governor's office to remain at home. All students and all staff remain at home, and that would be live instruction for 2.5 hours on Google Meet. That would be K-12. Remote learning is different. This is more asynchronous learning with possible live or streaming teaching happening throughout the day. This would also be a schedule that would look a tad different, based again on the number of students and how we would need to support everybody. But we just did want to be, fully upfront and present about that. We also know that devices, for us, we are not a one-to-one school district. We have definitely made some strides, and we are in the middle of major infrastructure work that is going on. We just did order about 1,000 new Chromebooks in order to be able to disperse for families that do not have any technology in their home at all. But it would be difficult for us to provide a device for every student in their home should they be on remote learning. So that would be something that the family would also have to consider. Students will be expected to complete all assignments daily, and any students obviously with disabilities on remote learning would be provided all of their accommodations as per IEP, as per their IEP. Okay. It's important, I'm sorry, it's important to just also talk about the secondary hybrid model for 6 to 12. On your A day, let's just say, for the sake of just explaining it to everybody, it would be a combination on A day. You would be in, your child would run their traditional regular schedule. They would leave with homework and any work that would be on their Google Classroom for the next day that they are home, while the teacher is then teaching the other second half of the class on B. Obviously, our teachers are committed folks, and they would be checking in, answering any questions within that 24-hour period. But we would expect that at the secondary level, again, kids would be making sure that all of their assignments are completed and they are present. Attendance is important as we move forward in this school year. Okay, now that we shared with you a model of how we're looking to return our students, I think it's very important that all families and community members know, our staff knows about the health and safety measures that we are putting in place, and we continue to look to put more in place as time goes on. Masks will be required for all staff and students, both in school and on the bus. Remember that the bus is an extension of school. Any students having any difficulty wearing a mask for medical reasons or because of a disability will need to submit documentation as always. They would affirm this with their building principal or through the Office of Student Services. Mask breaks will be provided because remember, in our classrooms, our desks are 6 feet apart, and in the regulations, children do not have to wear a mask during instruction. We would encourage, of course, that masks be worn at all times, but that does give us the opportunity to give multiple mask breaks whenever a child does need it while they're being instructed. Masks are to be worn, though, however, in the hallways, cafeterias if they're not eating, recess, any other common area that we would just want to be safe. We also every day, bus travel will also include, as I said before, social distancing practices. Optimally, we would be looking for 6 feet spacing and encouraging family members to sit together. Every day, parents and staff will be expected to fill out an online health screening survey. And in this presentation, when you do receive it, you will see a hyperlink in there that you could see a sample of what it looks like ahead of time. We also took time to ensure that at arrival and dismissal, varied entrances in all of our buildings will be sanctioned off to separate grade levels if they come off of the bus. We are also looking to take off the grade levels at increments of time off the bus so everybody is not coming out at the same time. So again, just looking to work ways to have plenty of flow. While classrooms may not look typical, especially at the younger levels, you may not see some of the rugs and some of the other items, the kitchen items, things like that, that you would normally see. Please know that our classrooms will be warm and inviting like they always are because their teachers will be there, their principals will be there, and we will still be able to decorate it. We will just not be able to decorate it with things that kids will be touching because it would need to be sanitized every day. All classrooms will be devoid, as I said before, of any of those items that may collect germs. We are in the process right now of setting up opportunities for our teachers to continue to clean out their own personal items. And we are also moving out any unwanted furniture that we don't need in the room so that we can maximize the space. Hallways and other common spaces are being marked appropriately to ensure social distancing. So markings on the floor, items around on the walls, and that's also shared later on in our presentation. So you will be able to see it at home as well when you open up the link. Hand sanitizer stations are located throughout each building, all along the hallways. We will also be having them at the elementary level or any other area for gym, cafeteria time, when at the secondary level they're able to go out. So as children go in and out, they can use a hand sanitizer. As they come into school, all of those welcoming areas would have a hand sanitizer station as well. And at the elementary level, we would expect that the students, because we do have sinks in every room, they would be washing their hands before and after snack and before and after lunch. Okay, so continued on. As I said earlier, we have reappropriated spaces at the elementary level, and we are in the process of doing the same walkthroughs now in the secondary buildings. We know it's going to be very difficult, especially for the cafeterias, to be utilized the way that they typically are, because children cannot sit in those tables together. So moving in some desks, looking at classroom use, all of those different types of things. But really at the elementary level, we will be using, again, if we're going on full return for all students right now in elementary school, we would be looking to utilize our music space, our art space, and so therefore those special areas become push-in for our students. We have worked with those departments and will continue to work to make sure that they have everything that they need for their lessons and equipment. Cleaning of all buildings will occur daily in the evenings. In each classroom, we will also provide hand sanitizer, wipes, gloves, and any sort of spray bottles and wipe-offs for our staff and our students who feel encouraged to clean in between. Applicable filters have also been changed in our classroom vents. We will also look to open up our windows and our doors where we can. Obviously, the reverse was safety, making sure that your doors were always locked, your windows were always closed. Now we're being encouraged by the Department of Health to please use fresh air when possible. So we will look to do that prior to it becoming too chilly out. Isolation areas have been identified in our buildings. And so if a child has any sort of symptoms, or they come to school and they have not filled out the health screening, those students would be placed there so that we can offer a temperature check and make sure that everything looks okay before we send them down to their classroom. Hygiene protocol visuals will exist in all buildings if they're not there already. And again, I share those with you at the end of our presentation so that you can see them. We will also be having routine hygiene drills, much in the same of how we have regular school building drills. At this time, unfortunately, no visitors will be permitted in our schools. We just cannot provide enough secure measures for our staff and our students. And so, again, we will be limiting all visitors. Both traditional fire and hygiene drills will be conducted. Elementary snack and lunch will be in the classroom to minimize flow. And secondary lunch, it may be in the cafeteria and alternately in the classrooms. We will also rotate any outdoor areas. So for recess, any of those other matters, classes will be rotated on the game field, the basketball court, let's say, for example, and in our playgrounds. Students are encouraged to bring their own water bottles. We do have bottle filling stations in all of our buildings. Our water fountains, unfortunately, will have to be closed at this time. Okay, so just some additional elementary return details that we wanted to share with you. It's always tough to start with health and safety because, again, we don't want it to sound like our students are returning to jail, but we do want to make sure that our students and our staff feel safe for the return. But please know that on top of everything that we are doing, the social and emotional well-being of our students is of the utmost importance to us as well as of our staff. And we have surveyed students, and we are looking to survey further the rest of our staff to just find out what are some of those underlying issues or concerns that people have so we can ensure that we have our mental health staff there for supports. Unfortunately, we will have to stress that students may not share materials at this time. Students will be assigned their own independent math workbooks, and guided reading baggies will be provided weekly so that we have time to interchange them out, clean them up, and leave them for the weekend so that there's a 2 to 3 day lag before the children pick up a new baggie. And in those items, we will integrate, as always, in our literacy and our math, our science and social studies topics whenever possible. This will be in addition to the strong direct instruction that our classroom teachers provide already. All students will be benchmarked for their ELA and their math to identify their present learning levels. Curriculum will be retaught as needed. We definitely know that this will need to occur for math, and we have provided some slides in the past that show you that we're fortunate. We created our own math curriculum here a couple of years back, and we know the 1 to 2 units that each grade level will probably need to go back to, so that if I'm coming into second grade, I'm certainly not going to be able to start on my second grade math curriculum. I'll need to be retaught some of the materials from when I was in first grade. And for literacy, once the teacher knows the collective levels of what they have in their room, they will be able to accommodate those literacy lessons around that. Art and music will be a push-in, again, to minimize the flow, and we are currently working with our art and music departments. This is one that was a really tough hit. Music has to be 12 feet apart for any choral or any sort of wind instruments. We are working our hardest with that department. We are very fortunate here. We have a very strong music program, and we do not want to see that diminish. And so we are looking for ways to think out of the box in order to be able to offer chorus opportunities that might be in smaller sections, and different ways to offer lessons as well. But we have provided and are keeping all lesson areas in the elementary schools so that students can still maintain lessons as needed. Physical education will be a mix of separating two classes, typically that are adjoined. So one class will be in the gym, one class will be outside. In inclement weather, they will rotate between the gym and in the classroom. Mr. Butel and Ms. McEntee have reworked their curriculum to ensure that all team sports will be done in the spring. So all of those units will be taught in the spring, and in the beginning, it will be more personal fitness. Traditional grading will also return for our students. While we know that there may be some interruption in terms of what model our students may have to face, where we hear rumors that we may have to go to distance learning sometime later in the fall, we fully believe that by using Google Classroom, no matter what, we will be able to make that seamless transition to distance learning should we need. And we are well prepared, as opposed to when the crisis first happened and most school districts were really just grasping at straws. But we also know that the accountability is something that is very important to our students, very important to our community, and especially to our students who are at the high school level. As I said before, Google Classroom will be utilized for communication at both the building principal and classroom teacher level. We really want to make sure that parents are on one medium so that they can see any communication, email, messages, lessons, etc. And at this time, we are going to enforce to ensure for the safety of our staff and other students that any sort of instruction that is done on Google Classroom or virtually, that our students adhere to our district code of conduct. When students this year sign on, families sign on to look at schedules, they will be asked and prompted to sign off on certain measures around this. Okay, I just wanted to share with you some of our pictures that John and I took as we went around in our walkthroughs. These are some samples of our elementary classrooms. Again, they're not decorated yet, of course, but you can see that we have removed a lot of the traditional, wonderful items that we would see in a classroom. But again, we really wanted to maximize space and ensure that the teacher had space in the front of where their smart boards are, and then also making sure that kids had room and were not, pushed up too much. So we still are adjusting that. Once every single classroom is created at the building level, we will be returning, Mr. O'Keefe and I, with our team to just ensure that everybody has space, both the teacher in the front of the room and then students around. So again, we are fortunate here. We do believe that we have enough staff to move forward, and should the numbers for remote learning ensure even more flexibility, we may be able to open up more sections in our elementary schools and at our secondary levels, bringing back more secondary students. This is at one more of the elementary school, and to the right there, you will see a classroom at the secondary level. This particular sample is where we marked the A and B desks so that students will be sitting, and then it will make it a little bit easier for cleaning at night for our custodial staff. Okay, this is also a little bit of a tough share here, because I know that we've been getting a lot of questions about childcare and UPK. First, childcare, we are still going to be providing AM and PM childcare by by Scope Educational Services. They continue to offer right now childcare throughout the pandemic for our essential workers, and they are happy to move forward to offer these services for all of our students. At this point, though, we are on hold for our UPK program. And that is not because we don't have the space or we don't want to, but we simply have not received the allocations yet from the state. And that is how we are able to run our UPK program. While we do have many students who do a tuition-based into the program, it is simply not enough to substantiate the program should we not get the allocations. So we are advising parents at this time. I know I've answered many phone calls, many emails. If you need care, if you would like your child to go to an alternate preschool, now is the time to seek that out, just to be safe. However, if we were to find out about the allocations tomorrow, we would also be able to implement that, moving forward. So we have not changed anything. We are not changing any spaces at this time. We're just kind of on a standstill. But to be safe, we just encourage you to look just in case.
Excuse me, Ms. Hines?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, since we last spoke earlier today, I spoke to Mr. Duffy. He's the executive director of Scope and runs our UPK program, just trying to see if he's heard anything further about the program. And he has not heard much more than we have. As a matter of fact, there was a meeting earlier in the day with the Suffolk County superintendents, as well as Mr. Wicks, who's the regional superintendent for Eastern Suffolk BOCES, to see what BOCES knew about UPK funding. And again, their contacts in Albany have been very, very quiet on it. The only information they've received is, floating a balloon from Albany that they're considering opening UPK up, but they may only fund it at 80% of what the grant would be. So that would mean if the district wanted to move forward, that would be an expense that was not budgeted for, and we'd have to make a determination, to take those monies from elsewhere to support the program. So it sounds like they're getting closer to a final decision, but I'd have to keep the board apprised. So it might be a model in which we'd have to support 20% of the program to make it move forward. So I'll keep you posted on that.
Thank you, Mr. O'Keefe. Okay, and then on to now our BOCES CTE programs. So those are our students, because we do have two. We have CTE programs that we house ourselves. They will still remain on the AB schedule, but the BOCES CTE programs where students get on the bus and go to BOCES. BOCES did alert us last week that they will be providing that in house. They do have the room, so that will be live every day. And for those students, we will still have busing from our high schools to and from the program. We, at this time, though, say that we may need family support in terms of if your child might need a ride to school if they are going to the program in the afternoon, or alternately. That is not solidified. Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Savone are looking at that through transportation to see if we might be able to accommodate and pick up individual students at their homes.
That would only be for those choosing remote learning.
Right, only those choosing remote learning. Thank you. Okay. So here I share the hyperlinks that you will see on the presentation that we've sent home. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go through all of these links, but the top is a sample of our health screening form, and the bottom of all the protocol visuals, a sample of them that we have smattered around every single building. And so for our next steps, as we said this morning, we finished our planning committee meeting where we laid out the final steps here with our district leaders and our volunteers. Our Board of Education presentation is now, as you can see. And then we also have a live community forum on Monday at 7 o'clock, and we will be live streaming it similarly here. However, I would envision that we would be a little closer so that you can see us a little bit more clear. But on Friday, we will be sending out a survey, just asking community members for questions that they have. We will collate those into subject areas, and we will look to our best answer any questions that you have. As well as our building administration will be delivering a common Q&A, sort of like fact sheet about further details pertaining to the buildings. And this will include sample schedules for all of our students, orientations, how those will go out for our grade 6 and our grade 9. Some of that will be virtual, and some of that will still be activities just broken up into smaller increments at the building, as well as arrival and dismissal times and bell schedules for secondary students. And then lastly, as Governor Cuomo had ordered on Friday, we are in the process of updating our district website for protocols for any symptomatic individuals. Testing. We are not responsible per se for testing ourselves, but we are responsible for offering a plan should a student or a staff member go home. They're required to go get testing where that could occur. And then, of course, they can't come back into school until testing results have been provided. And then contact tracing as well. Okay, so that is the end of our presentation this evening. We look forward to speaking and sharing some more and clarifying more for you as the rest of the night goes on, and then on Monday as well at 7 o'clock. Did I? Oh, my apologies. Let me go back. I didn't realize that. I think I got caught up in what we were saying about UPK before. So my apologies. These are some additional details about our secondary return. And again, with the utmost priority being the social and emotional well-being of our students. In grades 6 to 8, we will be benchmarking for ELA. We do that through a literacy management system that we have. And also for math, all of our math departments have benchmarking type assessments that they do in the beginning of the year. And again, this will be to identify present learning levels. In grades 7 to 12, curriculum adjustments may be made for applicable areas where prior learning needs to be had. So for example, in our math and our science classes, there may need to be some learning from the prior year's Regents sparing class. And so we would be looking to look at curriculum around that and possibly offer review classes for our students as well. Again, traditional grading will return. Students may not share, so we will be limiting textbook use, and we'll be taking advantage of all of the online subscriptions that we have. Physical education, again, very much like elementary school, will be a mix of the gym, outside fields, and other large area use. Instrumental lessons, very similar to elementary. We are working with that department to ensure that lessons will occur. They do need to be 12 feet if they are wind and or choral in nature. And again, we will be looking to figure out ways in order to still offer those choral groups, but in a modified version. Google Classroom will continue to be utilized for communication with both the principal and the classroom teacher. Again, for a seamless transition, should we ever be ordered into distance learning. Lockers will mostly be used for AM and pickup only. That's not to say that if a student really needed to go back, we would not allow them to, but again, just trying to minimize the flow and minimize how much our students are putting into the lockers. So we would envision some form of outerwear that's appropriate for that time, and modified or very slight binders and or folders, notebooks that they need. Stagger grades, again, in times of, at the end of the period, we would be announcing grades so that they can come out into the hallways. So that would mean that we would be, at the end of the period, starting it a little bit earlier so that we can allow each grade level to disperse into the hallway to their next period. Okay, sorry about that. So that still is the end of our presentation. We hope that this did clarify some further information for you. We are appreciative of the support and the time that the community offered us to be able to digest everything and wait for the orders so we can bring this to you tonight. Thank you.
Questions from the board?
Questions from the board? Is anybody? Jim?
John, on the UPK, right now the way that's funded is, correct me if I'm wrong, like a $600,000 grant.
Primarily, we get a $600,000 grant. We
Right.
hold a lottery that allots 252 families a spot in the program. We have more interest than that annually. Those families beyond the 253 are able to participate for the same rate, which is about $2,400 per family for the year,
Okay,
where they pay for it.
so if the governor would give us 80% of
Yes.
that would mean that the district would have to come up with $120,000.
Correct.
But are you in that $120,000? Are we counting that the lottery people are not paying tuition?
That would still be the lottery people not paying tuition.
Right. So in other
correct.
words, the $120,000 could be reduced if the lottery people were willing to pay a tuition fee. Yes.
If that was a model the board chose to go with, yes.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to piggyback on what Mr. Keenan was saying, if they were to take 20% of that, we'd be looking at about 479,200 is what we'd be looking at, which would accommodate 201 kids. You were saying that you were concerned that we might not be able to raise the funds to be able to, manage the program and have enough,
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to redo the lottery then. I wouldn't, I don't know if would you want to use the same number, then cut it off?
Why wouldn't you cut it
That's-
off at just 201 and then open it up at $237.69 per family per month?
We could examine
Still
any
cheaper.
model that the board wanted to take a look at.
Yeah.
Certainly those other families had already been notified that they were among the families chosen for the free
But
program.
that's the worst case scenario would be.
Correct.
But let's say they take all the funding and they don't. And one of the concerns I have, have we thought about reaching out to some of our state elected officials, Flanagan or Doug Smith, to find out if they can get us clarification from the governor's office as to whether or not he's going to fund?
Yeah, we can
UPK?
certainly continue to reach out. Quite honestly, during much of this crisis, much of them have been rather silent. We haven't been able to get a lot of information. Unfortunately, the governor isn't sharing much with other people other than when he decides to put it out via press conference.
I mean,
Normally our local representatives are very helpful in getting information for us. Unfortunately, haven't been able to get information for us, but it's certainly worth trying. I mean, we're 2 weeks before the start of school and you've got 252 families not knowing whether or not they have a pre-K.
I mean, I don't know, how the board feels, but I personally think that you would get 252 families, even if they took all 599,000. Because at $237 a month for half-day pre-K,
Mhm.
it's still a great opportunity.
Sure.
And I can't, and now more than ever,
And Mr.
families are going to
Duffy
need that.
would be willing to work with us if there was zero funding and we had enough participation to still run the program, yes.
Can we include something like that in a survey to some of the families out there to see what the interest would be?
We could do a separate survey. I wouldn't want to,
Well,
muddy
not
the,
on the same survey.
yeah, put it out as a separate survey specifically targeted to those families that are already in the process.
I have a follow-up to that. Where are we putting all these students if our classes are maxed out?
At this time, we still have not reappropriated those classes. We do have a couple of buildings because of additional special education sections that we needed, that we moved the classes, but we have not taken away those class spaces yet. So if we were to go with the will of the board to, put out a survey and go with a tuition base, we would be, all set to go.
Hi.
Hi.
I just had a quick question about the busing. What is the busing going to look like? With the,
Well,
or have you not
It's
gotten-
kind of
yeah, I mean, again, it'll also depend on participation. We put out a survey to the parents a week or so ago. I think we had 9,000 respondents in very brief order. In that survey, about a third of the families considered possibly keeping their children home. Of the 2/3 willing to send their children in, 65% of those said they would use the bus. The other 35% said they would drive their children to school. So just some quick math, you're only looking at, say, 4,500 kids interested in using the bus based on those numbers. I mean, they could change when we put out the new survey. And it could be that, parents first opt that they don't want to use the bus. And then during the year, maybe they start, they need the bus. So we're not reducing the number of bus runs. All of the runs that have been budgeted for would be running. But with those numbers, you'd end up literally with just about one child per seat. So.
And then you also
they-
take into account remote
Yeah,
learning.
they'll get
That
routed
would
for
be even less.
44 students. So in the worst case scenario, there could be 2 pupils in each seat. But based on the information we're receiving, I don't think there'll be that participation.
Thank you.
Okay, just some clarification. So with the custodial staff cleaning each night, so they're going to have more to do than they did prior. Have we increased the custodial staff since their job description will be different to do a
Mhm.
more deeper cleaning every day, daily versus?
Yeah, unfortunately, that was one of the items that was pulled back in the budget. So obviously, we may need to take a look at that again. We were adding 10 custodians. And then when there was issues where even today, we still don't know what our state funding is. And we still have the potential of a looming 20% cut. We decided, if you remember back to January and February, we were talking about this. We were adding 1 extra custodian in each building.
Right.
That was one of our enhancements for this year's budget. We did draw that back. So we're going to work with the custodial staff we have, work with the substitute staff we have, and man it as best as possible to optimize cleaning.
Okay, and then with the secondary schools where you have the A, B desks next to each other, so that means if I am an A student, I sit in only the A, and then the next day the B desk comes in.
That image
So-
might change, though.
I was going to say that was really more so that we can show a visual to the families how we were spacing it out in the beginning.
Yeah,
Okay.
Those desks we would see needing to be reappropriated and put into our lunchrooms, different other areas where we're going to need to reappropriate other space, the library, different items like that. So I don't necessarily think we were just at North today, and in the classrooms that we walked around in with Ms. Trombetta, there was only about 15 to 16 desks in each classroom.
Okay.
Yeah. That was an initial setup when we were trying to figure out what it would look
Right.
like or how we could divide them up. But in fact, with the style of cafeteria tables we have, it really prohibits the
It's-
number of
we
children
just
that can
don't, right.
then eat in the cafeteria. We believe we're going to take all the cafeteria tables out of those secondary cafeterias and store them and put in desks. I
in
mean, it's not going to be
desks.
the most attractive lunchroom. It'll be set up more like a testing room where children will be spaced 6 feet apart.
Right,
With
because they
classroom
wouldn't be able to
desks.
sit at the cafeteria
Correct.
under the guidelines.
But we do anticipate that we would be able to offer breaks for, students to be able to go outside and go into any of the recreation areas, items like that. Eliminated.
And so then, in the secondary schools, if the kids are changing classrooms,
Mhm.
will the desk get wiped down between each change, or how does that work?
In the
Well,
cafeteria, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
not in
In
the classroom.
classrooms, that would technically be not possible. I mean, there's 3,000 desks in high school and 1,600 or so in a middle school. There just wouldn't be the means in that 4 or 5 minutes of passing to wipe down those tables.
But if
We
a
are-
student would want to do their own desk,
Yeah,
if
the
they're
materials will be in the classroom.
classroom.
Right.
Yes.
We are providing that for every classroom.
Okay, and then one last question, sorry, everybody.
It's okay.
If a staff or a student happens to test positive, that would then be reported, and then the CDC would guide us on what we had to do, like, or we have our own plan? How does that work?
The Department of Health.
The
guides
Department
us.
of Health.
The Department of
Yes.
Health.
Yeah.
So they would tell us, like, so if it's one student in one classroom,
Right.
that may be different than a student in a middle school who
Mhm.
passes through a hall or,
Ms.
And Ms.
Capelin's
yeah.
become an expert on the matter.
okay.
So the Department of Health and the New York State and the federal requirements require us to make reports for certain things, and they require the medical treatment provider, the doctor who's performed the diagnosis for a positive result, to report information to reporting for contact tracing. So therefore, our obligation, we go above and beyond to make sure that even if for some reason the medical treatment provider has not contacted the contact tracing, we will just check, belt and suspenders that we have provided some insight in case there's an instance. The other thing is when the lab results come back, the lab results are supposed to be also provided to the contact tracing, at which point the Department of Health would be, or CDC would be contacting tracers and determining who they would contact, including students or staff or family or whoever they came into contact with.
Can I piggyback on that question quick?
Yes, thank you very much.
So on the checklist that we do
Mhm.
daily, let's just say Rob and I are in a classroom and I find out that he tests positive for COVID. The next day when my parents are filling out the check sheet and it says, have you come in contact with anybody that's tested positive, will that prevent my entrance into the building?
If you're saying you tested positive,
Yeah, if you're saying you're tested, right.
No,
I
not
mean, like,
me.
I'm not going
My
to tell you
classmate.
that Rob tested
We're not allowed to
positive.
tell you.
I mean,
But
if
I
you
mean, if
came to learn it on
If it
your own.
becomes common knowledge of who it was.
Yeah.
And now I have to honestly fill out the sheet.
Yeah, I mean,
I have to say, yes, I did come into
The
contact with
the
somebody.
Department of Health guidelines for close contact, and this is where it gets a little squirrely because, are we in close contact? Are we in close contact? Their criteria for close contact is less than 6 feet for 15 minutes or more. So we'll have to look at each of those one at a time. And I can foresee the Department of Health, as soon as schools open, becoming overwhelmed with calls from districts all around the state, just trying to get feedback and answers. So, we're building criteria and protocols with our nursing staff, with our personnel staff, so we can make some of these decisions on our own. We have handled situations already, even during summer school programs. So it's not that we're unfamiliar with how to do it. We've had staff members with COVID. So it's just going to be on a bigger scale now. That's all.
And also, just to mention, Mr. Block is with us this evening from Ingerman and Smith. He has been one of our main contacts that we've been triaging information between the state, the federal, what we have in our schools, what we can do and what we can't do, and trying to find the best scenario for our students and our staff. And we'll continue to do so.
And I promise this is my last question. So if a parent chooses the remote learning,
Yes.
they have to commit to that for the year. They can't change their mind, like after the first marking period, they're committing to that. And then their student cannot participate in, let's say, spring sports.
No, so I think in the beginning of the guidance, it said that students may not be able to enter into activities or sports. We know now that is not the case, and that if a child is remote, they're still a student of ours. We're not really going to have any activities, so we don't foresee that being an issue. So it's really more for sports. But Ms.
Right.
Trombetta, who sits on the Committee 4 section, has shared with us information in terms of how they're looking at that language and how we would not be prohibited, most likely, from
Okay.
keeping
'Cause I
children
just
back
wouldn't
from
want
sports.
a parent to commit
Sure,
in
absolutely.
September, and then the child plays a spring sport,
Right.
And then come the spring, sports are up and running and you tell the child they can't play.
And please just know that when we write that we're looking to make it more of a commitment that could be up to a year, that is because we don't want to give the misnomer that if a child says, well, I want to, a family decides that they want to be remote in a week and then they change their mind and they want to do it another week, we will look at each case, but it would be very challenging for us to bring back large numbers of students who feel they might have made a poor choice, because that would shift all of our classrooms and all of our teaching staff.
No, I would totally agree with that. I just didn't know if it would be like after every marking period reevaluated. But if the parent does commit, I just don't want to hurt the student
Of course.
by saying if extracurricular comes back in spring, your parent made this choice in September and now you can't participate.
Right. And I think for us, being just of mind that things could shift very easily, we
Right.
could look at that come January, and it may not need to be a year-long commitment, but we did want to write it down so that parents were aware.
All right. Thank you very much.
No
and
problem.
Thank you for sharing this with us.
Yeah, I have 2 questions or concerns. When this plan was developed, to return to school, the K through 5, the A Day, B Day, it wasn't based on surveys that went out as to the number of parents that think they would choose remote or not choose remote. It was based on our entire population.
Yes.
So conceivably, if we have a 6 through 12 model of A Day, B Day,
Mhm.
hypothetically, if every parent said, I want my kids to return to school, we can accommodate all of them in an A Day, B Day.
What, you mean physically back into
Yes.
school? No, we wouldn't be able to do that. How would we physically bring them all back? We don't have, so at the elementary level, just very simple math, right? We have to take out about 5 to 6, 7 kids out of each classroom in order to be able to accommodate that
I
average
think I
size.
think you missed my question a little bit. On the 6 through 12 model,
Uh-huh.
okay, that was based upon returning every single child to school. So if Friday the surveys come
Oh,
in,
yes,
every
yes, I see
parent
what you're saying.
says,
Yep, yep.
Yeah, we can
Right,
accommodate everyone.
if we have more children, now I understand you, thank you.
So
So if we have more children who are going to be on remote,
Mhm.
we could conceivably, and I know we discussed this morning in our committee, we
Well, that's
could
what
look
I'm-
to bring
yeah.
back more students.
yeah, that's my question is that my concern is the same as Laura's. Having a 1-year commitment, I received half a dozen phone calls today, probably in the last couple of hours about, I'm concerned about the 1-year commitment. We know, okay, that, in remote learning, it says remote instruction is not equivalent to in-person hybrid instruction.
Right.
So it's not the same level.
Right.
So if we're forcing kids out of school, what we're doing is we're creating a bigger educational gap for the following year.
Well, we're not forcing, that would be a parent's choice.
But the thing is, we allowed them to come back after each quarter, okay? If we're able to accommodate them according to the way the
Right.
plan was designed, why wouldn't we allow them to come back after 1 quarter so they can get that?
I didn't think we said that we wouldn't be allowing. We said that it would be really prohibitive for us to be able to reschedule them back into classrooms, but we could look at it based on the numbers that we have.
But-
We wanted to be honest, Mr. Scavo, and let families know that this could be a year-long commitment. And most districts are looking at that at either January or the year long because it is very disruptive. That would mean having to just move around the entire schedule for, our schools, which we may still have to do should COVID restrictions be lifted. But you wouldn't want to recant. And we know that that happened quite a bit, where in the beginning of all this debacle, we were putting out information and then something, alternatively was shared. But I think we just said before with Ms. Slattery that, of course, if we could look at it by quarter and we felt like it wasn't going to be a tremendous feat for our families, that we would do that. But I think that that's not probably what a parent is going to make their choice on. If I'm choosing to be remote, it's because I'm thinking that it's unsafe for my child to be at school. So I'm hoping that by these presentation slides that we have, people will see that we've made tremendous strides in making sure that our schools are safe, they're clean, and we're doing routine protocols to ensure that.
But the commitment is a year. That's what they're signing.
For right now, yes.
So if something changes at home, a person that's furloughed now has to go back to work.
Right.
They want that, and their impression is going to be that they can't return because they signed the paper saying that they have a 1-year commitment to be at.
Yeah,
remote
but I
learning.
mean, I think though, if there's something along those lines, and we all get those calls all the time, if there's a family that really is in of need and feels like they made the poor choice, or not a poor choice, they made the wrong choice for what their thing is going on right now. So whether a parent goes back furloughed or their child is just not doing well in remote learning, and they were to contact us, just like any other parent phone call that we would have, of course, we would look at every case individually. But I'm talking as a whole, we could not say, you're going to be in remote, and then if you choose to decide in masses that you want to come back, we just would not be able to run the same schedule, and then we would be restarting everything over again.
The reason why I bring this up is I watched the Newsday webinar yesterday.
Mhm.
We had Dr. Johnson. I finally heard all about him. I got a chance to see him in the presentation, along with a psychiatrist, along with the superintendent from North Babylon. And that exact question came up.
Right.
And a lot of the experts were saying, I would not go past a semester. In fact, a lot of districts are going quarterly, and I just don't want to influence a person's decision because they're fearful that if they sign that paper, they're not going to be able to come back. Because the reality of it is that, when we look at the education of even an A day, B day, my concern is that as a teacher, you can't teach the entire curriculum. And now we're talking about prior learning being retaught from the previous year. How you're never going to be able to teach the entire curriculum. But the kids that are home that are not getting the same equivalency of education are going to be further behind the following year. And all we're going to do is create a snowball effect. And that's my concern. I mean, I personally would like, the opportunity that if they come back after the first quarter, which is a 10-week period or 9-week period, I think it would be a little bit more settling for the people in the community, knowing that, all right, this remote's not learning. I committed to a year. Now I'm stuck.
Well, I mean, I think two things, right? Because I agree with you. I don't think anybody wants to be in the position where we can't welcome back students interchangeably as they need. And we definitely know that no matter what happens, curriculum is going to be interrupted this year. That is a safe bet, right?
But if we planned on
if it's
the
the will
whole
of the
thing.
board, if
Yeah.
it's the will of the board to change that and you would like to make that language more flexible, we're happy to do that. But please know that we've taken, quite a considerable amount of time to making sure we would prefer our students not to be on remote.
Mhm.
But if a family really chooses and needs to choose that, we honor and we respect that.
Absolutely.
But yes, I mean, nobody wants to do that, but nobody's the size of Sachem either. And so we have different restrictions
But
that some other school
that's why I asked
districts
the question,
don't.
was the plan designed based on the entire,
It was based on if all students
So-
were going to be a full return, then we would have to go in an A-B day. If we are finding though that we have remote students at a quantity where we can bring back students even an additional day or by grade level, seniors first, ninth graders first, however we look to plan through that, then would be our next step. So just like what we were saying earlier in our remote instruction, it's going to be hard to match up what exactly the model will look like until we have the survey results from our teachers and for our families so we can match it up certification wise.
like I said, my biggest concern is we have kids taking AP exams.
I got it.
And getting those kids ready for that and getting those kids ready for the next level, college.
Yeah.
We have to try and get them as much face time with staff. It's absolutely.
I agree with you, and I'm very thankful. Working with the SCTA, if we ever have to think about distance learning, the fact that we'll be providing 2.5 hours every day for our students, so running the same schedule, just shortened periods. Working on Google Classroom interchangeably now and consistently across all of our classrooms. Just right now, currently, we have a tremendous amount of teachers that are undergoing PD virtually to ensure that everything is up and running and that they feel clarified and supported in that kind of work. But you're preaching to the choir. I couldn't agree with you more that this is a really challenging time. I have a high schooler myself, and she's in a smaller district doing an AB schedule. So I scratch my head at a lot right now. So I completely respect and understand. And if the board would like us to look at the year-long date, please just let us know, and we'd be happy to accommodate. No, this will go, the remote learning actually just went out. That survey just went out, but we can, I could send it on Remind in 5 minutes if we wanted to say, that we've changed the date. But it sounds like maybe that needs to be more of a discussion if we're looking to go that route.
Meredith and then Jimmy.
So on the remote learning, if a parent were to choose that model, I understand that we would want them to commit for the full year because we are devoting staff just to that remote learning, right? We're not using a
That's the
teacher
goal
who
of
may
ours,
be inside the classroom sometimes. We're going to utilize the staff that for whatever reason has to be staying at home to be our remote teachers.
That's the optimal plan, right? So
Right.
at the elementary level, Ms. Volpe, it works a little bit easier in that
Right.
fashion. If I'm an elementary teacher and I'm out, I can conceivably teach any of those grade levels. If I'm a librarian, obviously that certification, et cetera, et cetera. It gets a little trickier at the secondary level because if I'm a chemistry teacher and I'm out and maybe I don't have as many students out for chemistry, then what am I giving to that teacher in terms of work that they would be doing for that day? So one could say that you would switch what they're doing and now they're going to teach more science electives and they can support any of those students who are out needing science electives. So it's really going to boil down to looking at the hard numbers of students matched up with the teachers that we have. Should we not be able to match everybody up, which I'm hopeful we will be able to, then we would need to start entering into some sort of live streaming or a larger groups of Google Classrooms, where a teacher, instead of having a class of maybe 25 or 26 in a Google Classroom, we may have to have larger numbers. And so then that's why the year-long decision or not doing it every quarter becomes very challenging for us. If I'm a teacher and I'm running a Google Classroom of 45 kids, and now those classrooms want to go back, what classroom are they going into? Where am I fitting them into? So then you're having to change people's schedule. It's a lot of moving parts.
It is.
It
And
is.
then if, so children are able to, through their parents,
Mhm.
choose whether they want to come back to school or not.
Mhm.
Our teachers are not electing whether they're coming back to school. The teachers that are staying home to do the remote learning are the teachers that have reasons why they cannot
Right.
return.
Correct.
And so even if tomorrow, 3 weeks after school started, all of our remote learners said, well, this is for the birds. I don't like this.
Mhm.
I want to go back to school. We wouldn't then have the ability to bring them back. Because
We
even though
would
we did
not.
the classrooms for
Right.
them, we wouldn't at that point have the ability, would we? 'Cause-
Well, not at this time, because
Right.
again, with 6 feet, we are, down to the amount of numbers that we have. But if our numbers look as such where the remote learning is a larger quantity, then our elementary classrooms, let's say, for example, instead of them being 17, they might only be 13 or 14. So then we could start welcoming them back, but that would be based on almost, looking at each student individually and being able to see how we can schedule them back into school.
Which is probably a very physical impossibility in the next 3 weeks.
It's a little hard.
Yeah.
Little
The
hard
next
in 3
question
weeks.
is, with our secondary schools,
Mhm.
as a secondary mom, it kind of does stink, and there's no two ways about it. Our children, no child is going to get the best education this year. It's just not going to happen. It's something
We're
we all
going
have
to
to
try our
just-
best.
Yes,
Try
we will
the best
definitely
that we
try our
absolutely
best.
can. Right.
If one, let's say Samoset had an influx of, 80% of their kids wanted to stay home and remote learn,
Mhm.
that would open up a lot more room, but it wouldn't necessarily mean that we would do Samoset where their children went every single day and the rest of the
No,
grades
we
didn't.
would be making decisions that are consistent for
whole.
all
Okay.
students, but then we might be reappropriating staff to help out in other ways in other areas.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, but
It's okay. That's why we're here on the spot.
Have we looked into 6th grade at all? Because in my opinion, 6th grade is that lost
Sure.
grade. It's a grade
Sure.
where they're a little too young to still stay home by themselves,
Mhm.
and not only just stay home for the day by themselves, but also teach themselves kind of, get
Absolutely.
on this schedule, get on the computer, do what you got to do, keep yourself moving on that
Yeah.
B day. Have we visited something that once we get all our numbers, because I know we can't really finalize anything until we get all these surveys and numbers, but once we get all those numbers, are we going to be able to maybe look at 6th grade going every day as a possibility?
Yeah, that's that's definitely a conversation that we've been having. As soon as we know what the numbers are, we'll be able to welcome back additional grades.
Great.
And I would assume that we would be having these conversations with all of you, our administrative team, obviously, as well. And 6th grade is one of those, that was a really hard thing to kind of cut off at. Because we know that they could be 10, 11 years old going into school, and I would not feel comfortable myself at times leaving my child home for long periods. And so, yes, we've had those conversations, and once we know the numbers, we'll be able to come back and report if we're able to make any changes.
Good. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Just a quick question, some
Okay.
clarification, I
Sure.
guess. Piggybacking a little bit on what Mr. Scavo said, are we entering the year making an assumption that we're not going to be able to deliver 100% of content in regards to secondary curriculum? If that is the assumption
Mhm.
that I think you said that we're almost entering into, who's going to choose what topics and what's being covered? Are we letting
Right.
different teachers, different people?
Yeah.
It concerns me that we're entering. I know there's no perfect answer and there's no scenario that can
Right.
that under these circumstances that we're giving you, but I guess that makes more Mr. Scavo's point is that if we're making the assumption that we're not going to be able to deliver content, we should be trying to wait till some of these surveys come back and see how many kids we can actually get in the classroom.
Yeah, and so no, right, I don't have a perfect answer for it, but I can tell you what we're doing to set up for that. I had a chair meeting a couple of weeks ago, so our instructional leaders in each department to talk about that, especially at the secondary level. And so we would be looking at our curriculum, at what are the big ideas at the end of the school year, what is it that the students are expected to learn so that they can, move forward and pass those classes and/or Regents exams. We're also hoping to have a little bit more guidance in terms of the state education department, in terms of what they're going to do in relaxing standards and curriculum and testing. So much in like how they had canceled the Regents, we don't hope for that. We hope more for choice, so that these students who are working hard, getting grades, attending, will be able to at least have a choice for Regents if they want to take it and see what kind of grade they get. I don't think we're looking, I don't think, and I know you didn't mean it this way, but we're not assuming we're not going to be able to get through our curriculum, but we want to be real with our families that curriculum could look a little bit different than what it normally does. And I know our teachers, again, hard workers, they're already looking at that. We've had some conversation, for example, around science lab hours. Usually that's seat time. Now the state education department has relaxed that, and that can be also virtual. So we've already started those conversations. Once we come back into schools, in our department meetings that we've been having anyway virtually, we'll continue those talks and start looking at that together.
So this, at the secondary level, the New York State creates the standard for AP and Regents, right? And
So
they haven't given us clarification. Okay. So
well, AP is through the College Board, and so we actually are starting, as you know, a new AP capstone program at the high school. So those teachers that are going to begin teaching it for us this year, they just went through the training for that. And right now, AP is holding tight to what they're doing, but we also know that at the last minute they made some changes around what they did testing-wise virtually. So we are advocating, and I think Mr. O'Keefe spoke about this earlier. While we have not heard a tremendous amount from our legislators at this time, we have been advocating through our local BOCES, our associations, talking to the College Board, and just hoping for some teamwork for relief, so that families know that, we're not looking to make any decisions that are going to make impacts for the students, but we also have to be real, and they have to work with us. So we're hopeful for that. No problem.
Aaron, so by the weekend, we will have the figures on how many people are opting for remote learning. Is that
Yes.
correct? All right.
Yes.
And the way we have it now is they're being committed, they're making a commitment for 1 full year.
Mhm.
Just for my edification, let's suppose it came back to say 30% of our district wants
Which
to
could
do-
be, right?
Which it could be.
Which
right.
it could be, sure.
What does that change anything for us with the AB days, or as Meredith said, the 6th grade situation? Would let's say 30% remote for the year? Would that change, what we're doing right now?
Yes, absolutely. So like what
Yeah.
I
Can you
just said
tell me
with
how
Ms.
it's
Volpe.
Also going to take, where is the 30%?
Yeah, it could
is
be-
it
is it
heavily weighted on the
elementary?
younger children?
Right.
Is it K-1-2 families deciding they want to keep them home?
Right.
It really depends on the breakdown of the groupings and the grades of where that 30% is. Or is it leaning more on one side of the district versus the other?
Right. Well, I'm
It's not
trying-
as clean as just if it was 30%
But yes, I
equally
mean,
spaced across the district. That would make it easier.
we can see some movement. I'm just not sure that I could say for sure right now that it would be at the secondary level. We would just need to see where it is and just aggregate that and just look at it. And it also boils down to certification areas too as well. How much staff we have in each area.
I fully understand Mr. Scavo's position on it. I really
Sure.
do understand it, but I'm trying to look at this as, if you put out a survey tonight, which is already gone, but if you put it out and it said you're one marking period and you could change your mind, then kind of I would say that we're stuck with what we've got. This is the way it's got to be, because you don't know from marking period to marking period how many students you're going to have. Is that accurate?
Well, yeah, I mean, but that goes back to what we said. We can't put out there that you can make the decision after each quarter if we're not sure we're going to be able to offer that. And so I know it may have looked like it was a little bit stricter than it sounds like the board was willing to move forward with. And so again, we're certainly open to putting in alternate language, and we could send it as quick as, as soon as we're done here or first thing in the morning. I certainly don't want to prohibit anybody from not doing remote learning, but again, we have to be practical in the size of our school district. So we can't say we're going to be able to offer things that smaller school districts can right away, but it is prohibitive based on the numbers. So yes, we might be able to offer that, and we might be able to offer more grades into our secondary schools. We might be able to offer more space for our elementary students. We just won't know until we see all of those numbers
So
yet.
getting that number that we're seeking this weekend will drive where we go next.
Yes. And that's why it's challenging to be able to share with our staff and with our community what remote learning will, essentially look like as well. If I don't have enough staff, I can't guarantee that you're going to be in a Google Classroom with a live teacher. I might not be able to offer that. It may be based on whatever elective or grade that you're in. It could be some sort of like a live streaming, but again, it depends on the numbers of the students that we have up against our staff as well.
Thank you.
Jim, just real fast to piggyback, I apologize, I walked out for a second. If only 75% of the families respond to the survey,
Mhm.
so now there's 25% of the kids, we don't know what they're doing.
No, the default is that they're coming to school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
So I know with elementary, the teachers usually take their lunch when the students have their lunch.
Mhm.
How are we working then if they're having their lunch in the classroom? Who will be supervising them?
So we do have obviously aid support. We are also working with our principals because we know that we're probably going to need some additional help with that. But we also know that that lunch is managed. I actually thought that there was some staff that was a part of the lunch periods, but I might be mistaken.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that.
But we are having conversation to ensure that we have the support we need for lunch.
Okay, and one more. Two more actually. What will clubs look like virtually?
So that's another new and exciting question, right? We definitely know that clubs are not going to be able to be maintained after school physically. We have started to work with an online platform called Passport for Good, and it allows clubs to run virtually and note down all of their activities, attendance, community service hours, if a child is working, any of those types of hours. So we have to enter into conversation with our teachers about what that could look like. We certainly don't want to not offer clubs, but once a week, twice a week, what sort of activities, how will you meet with them? Will Google Meet be a part of it? Those are the questions that we're looking to have moving forward around clubs.
And one more. With the staggered start times,
Mhm.
are students still changing for gym class?
We will not be changing for gym, and we will not need to because we have moved team sports to the end, and we're looking to do more, personal fitness that isn't rigorous. But no, we would not be looking to have any contact in that manner for our students.
Bill?
As I sat here tonight, I thought about saying absolutely nothing. And I really don't know where to begin. And I don't have a specific question. I can tell you that I'm incredibly angry internally right now. And it's not at anybody in this room. But I thought that I haven't organized my thoughts completely. They're just bouncing around in my head. But I want to say a few things. First, I want to say that you did an outstanding job. In the most difficult of circumstances, you've put together a plan. Every school district is in the same exact boat that we are in. Questions asked tonight by Rob, Alex, Laura, Meredith, everybody here. Great questions. And we don't have the answers to any of those questions. And we are going to be surprised, I think, greatly by the things that we find. I think that, people could look at what's going on here tonight and they may think that all of us agree on this model and think that this is what we have to do. I'm sure there are people watching this tonight, streaming, or will watch it later on, and they'll think that if you're sitting here, I'm sitting here, and I'm quiet, that I must agree with this plan, and I think it's wonderful. And I'm going to tell you that I don't. It's rotten. It's a rotten plan that's going to do tremendous damage to our children. I've been teaching for over 22 years now. I can remember when I started, there was Goals 2000. Maybe some people in the room remember that. Maybe you don't. Then there was No Child Left Behind. And then most recently, there was Common Core. There's never a time in which it seems like a bad idea can't come about. A bunch of garbage and nonsense that does anything but improves the education of our children. As I sat here tonight and I watched that slideshow, and I watched those desks sitting so far apart, I thought, what kind of dystopian period of time have we entered into where we look at this and we accept this as the quote unquote, what I hate to say, the new normal. It's not normal to me. It's not acceptable to me. I want you to know that if it were up to me solely, I would defy the governor. I would send all of our children back to school. I would give them that opportunity. I believe that his edicts are completely unrealistic in terms of delivering a sound education to our children, and I believe they are not well-based in terms of research and data and so on. So when we look at how many children have ended up with COVID and what's happened to them, there's no question that COVID exists in my mind. I lost one friend to it. I almost lost a second. Several who had it very badly who thought they might lose their lives. So there's no question that COVID exists. However, when I look at the numbers and when I look at children getting COVID, what I see is that our response is disproportionate to what is going on. And we are willing to just fall in line and listen to the leadership of this state, this country, and do these things. And I know there are people who feel like me. And I know there are people who don't feel like me. A third of the survey respondents who have said, I'm not comfortable sending my child to school. And I am all about parental choice. If you do not feel comfortable sending your child to school, then I encourage you not to. I encourage you to homeschool. I encourage you to use the remote option if you're not comfortable with that. However, I feel like I've been denied my choice, which is to send my child to school. I'm willing to tolerate that risk based upon what I know, because I think that the damage being done to my child that still is in school, and the damage being done to other children is tremendous. I taught remotely for the last, 3-4 months of school. And when I tell you that I did as good of a job as anyone could do with live instruction every single day, all right? I worked very hard to do what I did. And I watched kids slide into the great abyss. And some of those children that I watched slide are supposed to go off to Princeton this fall, are supposed to go to Cornell, are supposed to go to, you name the school, and they're going, Columbia, and so on. But yet I've watched each one of them slip, and I've watched a few hold on. And I've watched the most needy students that I taught completely slip. We're not getting that back. We are not. And here we are, and here's where we're going. So I'll leave on this particular note. Sometimes it's real easy to just go along. And I feel terrible for people like you folks, the administration here. It's simple, and I'm in the same boat as an educator. It's my job, it's how I support my family and live my life. And as a result of that, I'm forced to comply, because if I don't, I'm out of a job. But the solutions we've come up with, they're not good solutions. They're terrible solutions, and they are solutions that are going to harm each and every one of our children. And at some point, I do believe the people who feel the way that I feel are going to have to think long and hard about how we stand up and demand what we want for our children that we think is best.
I just want to say before I ask my last two questions, that was well said, Bill. I feel exactly the same way you do. So, well said. I just want to talk about the BOCES, because I also feel some questions today about BOCES. As I had mentioned earlier in the meeting, community meeting, where there was only 50 people in that meeting.
Where there's only 50 people?
There was 50, how many people in the community meeting? That we
50
were at?
volunteers, and then
50
all of our
volunteers.
staff
Yeah.
as well? Yeah. Go ahead.
Having worked for BOCES for going into my 29th year, over the decades, things change. School districts go to block schedule, and Kings Park did at one point. School districts, for financial purposes, decided that, we don't want to send 2 bus routes to BOCES. We only want to have 1 route. And as a result, they basically said to our agency, look, we're only sending in the AM this year. Or we're only sending seniors in the AM and juniors in the PM. And they've changed things so that it accommodated them. And our BOCES always accommodated them. And my concern with some of the questions with some of the students that are in CTE classes that are scheduled to go to carpentry and auto body and whatever other programs they signed up for, is that transportation becomes an issue. If we have an A day, B day, Those particular subject areas, you have to be there every day. You can't teach somebody how to sand a fender and paint it remotely.
Right.
It's just not something that
I
can
agree.
happen. So I suggested earlier that maybe we should call BOCES, Eastern Suffolk BOCES, and say, look, we pay anywhere from $14,000 to $20,000 tuition, depending on the particular student, if they have an IEP or not, or if they need additional services. We can only send in the AM because of the situation we're in, and get their feedback.
Yes,
I
I believe
I don't think they want to lose the tuition.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I did appreciate that idea because I know you're in Western, but it was just, shared with us the model that they were running. And so we're told what our schedule is, but we are quite large. And I agree with you. We pay an exorbitant amount of money into BOCES, and it's certainly worth the conversation.
The second thing, we have in-house CTE classes as well. We have cosmetology.
Yes.
And using the same concept. I mean, if we have to get our kids there every single day, the suggestion that we've done in BOCES is that we try to allocate the junior students, the first year students, in the AM session. This way, they could take that bus up every single day,
right,
and just have to get a ride home two days out of the week. And then the PM students, or the second year students, would actually attend cosmetology in the PM because many of them may have driver's license and permanent license in cars. It's just another suggestion to be able to accommodate that population of kids that really need to be there 5 days a week, especially cosmetology students that have licensing and hours and all that stuff.
Which, by the way, our cosmetology teacher, I mean, she really just went above and beyond to ensure that the kids had the experience they needed, even if it was virtually. So I agree with you, and I do appreciate that feedback.
Yeah. And then just the last thing is more of a comment, and it's frustrating because I hear what Bill's saying.
I hear, and if you don't mind, Mr. Scavo, I really do, Mr. Coggins, I don't want you to think, or anybody to think, that we just, laid low because of our jobs. I think everybody knows I came from a district where we stood very tall against things that were coming down from the state education department. I think when you're talking about health, it's a little bit challenging, but I hope you understand, and I hope everyone in the community knows that at no point did I think that I was doing this just because it was my job, but because I really do want what's best for children, like I know all of us here. But I stand just as equally frustrated when you're out and you see people out and about in playgrounds and beaches and whatnot, and we're held to, very different standards. But when I tell you that we're working 18, 19, 20 hours to make sure we're given the best, I know it's not what we all want, but I do respect what you said, and I really do appreciate that feedback.
My last thing is really more of a statement. And, when I look at the guidelines for reopening in New York, and it seems like they print a new one every week because they change the rules every week.
So crazy.
You look at number.
If I can say that.
John, when you said it was cryptic, it really is. I mean, you need to, you can interpret this 50 different ways.
Yes.
But they have a mandatory column and then recommendations for best practices, which I don't understand. But it talks about ensure that social distancing 6 feet, at least 6 feet, or a physical barrier is maintained between individuals while in school facilities, on school grounds, including in cafeterias, unless safety or the care of activities such as moving equipment or elevators traveling in common areas requires shorter distance of individuals. But then number 2 says, if social distancing is not possible, individuals must wear acceptable face coverings.
Yep, that's
So getting
exactly
back
how
to
we
what
interpreted
we were
it.
talking about earlier. If we have to move kids back into a classroom, the way I interpret this, and maybe legal counsel give me their opinion, is that if we had to move desks closer together, okay, to be able to not be able to, accommodate the social distancing, by putting masks on the kids, we would be able to do that.
And that's exactly how we started out our planning. If you remember, we had looked at, I think it was the Massachusetts model, where we were looking to at least go no less than 3 feet. And when we did that, it was like everyone's high-fiving each other, everyone's coming back, this is great. And I don't mean to put Mr. Block on the spot, but we did receive guidance from legal, and it looked as though that masks were not going to be appropriate alone. But we read the regulations the same as you. It was just as disappointing when we found out that was not to be.
Mr. O'Keefe the other day, you'd mentioned that if we were able to go 3 feet, we could accommodate every kid
student.
Every kid come back.
Every
full-time.
student. We had every building make up a class for 3 feet. And so we were able to say that if parents felt safe for their children to return, that we were able to do that. Our hands are very tied in terms of that. And, again, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Mr. Block, but you may want to jump in then.
This was a few weeks ago where, we thought that just mask face covering was going to be sufficient if you couldn't maintain the social distancing. But then the governor's office came out and clarified that and said that, no, you have to have that physical barrier. And so that then took away what we thought was our ability just to have face masks.
But the face coverings are okay in the hallways in the bus.
Yes, well, yeah, there's no,
Yes.
Nothing makes
I can't
sense.
say that's completely
Nothing makes
logical,
sense.
but that is, that's what we're following.
So Erin,
Yes, I'm sorry.
as we all know,
I should have had a swivel chair,
Swivel
John. I'm
chair.
just saying. Should have had a swivel chair.
as we all know, education is not going to be pretty this year. And we want to give our children as much as we can. And we've spent so many years working on this, educating the whole child and worrying about social emotional. I'm the most emotional person, shouldn't be talking about this, but so a couple of things. Our most vulnerable social and emotional, as we see little children adapt much better. You see a 2-year-old in Target with a mask on, it's not a problem. My teenagers find the mask uncomfortable. And so our 6 through 12, in my opinion, are our most mentally vulnerable. And I just feel like because things are so different, are they going to be able to just go down to the guidance counselor, just go down to, are things like that, like where they want to just go take 5 minutes with the guidance counselor or even the school psychologist? Is that still going to be fully in place, opened to everyone? Is there also, I know that over the distance learning period last year that our Sachem North
SEL chairs.
they did a tremendous job having a Google Meet also. Are things for mental health in place? And then my other question is, what does recess look like in COVID land in elementary?
Because I think I lightly brushed over that, so I'm glad
Right.
that you asked about that.
Because, so last year was the big thing that we were taking away 5 minutes from lunch and recess. And see, there's always bigger fish to fry, people. So with that, they're going to be allowed to go outside. They're going to be allowed to run it all off. Are they allowed to play on the play gyms? Are they allowed to play ball with one another? Or is it you're going to stay there and just run in place, and you're going to stay there and run in place? And
Yeah, I mean, I think realistically, they are children. We're going to do our best to set up so that it's a safe environment, but there's not going to be wardens out there if they are playing ball. I can't tell you that we will. I mean, they're going to be, as I said earlier, rotating between the fields that we have, the playground equipment that we have, and then the basketball courts. So we would obviously have equipment outside for that. Okay. We do have sanitizing stations that we will be utilizing for the students. But again, as I said, I think in the beginning, we do not want our students to come back feeling like we're in jail. Right. And the first thing that we had on our slides was the social and emotional well-being of our students. And I'm very proud of the program that we have built here. And we are just looking for unique ways, whether it be virtual, more push-in from our SEL chairs, all Project Kindness, all of those things. We'll still have them this year. They just may look a little bit different. In terms of the mental health staff, Ms. Graham and the Office of Student Services, now under the direction of Ms. Trombetter, with Ms. Graham, we will be deploying guidance counselor. All of those services are still in place, but we see ourselves doing more proactive lessons as students come in and more pushing into our classrooms so that students feel comfortable. We know the issues that we're seeing out there. Again, our SEL chairs have sent out a survey to our students at the secondary level, and I agree with you, at the elementary level, we're going to be doing more proactive resiliency skill type of activities with them. Our health teachers for the past year have been building a health workbook for the elementary schools that are rooted in all of the resiliency skills that we have been studying using the University of Pennsylvania. So we're really excited about what we can deploy for our students. And, it goes back to, yes, we are so worried about curriculum, and we are going to work to ensure that all big ideas, as much as we possibly can until this is all over, is taught. But our first charge is just making sure that those kids feel happy and safe and healthy coming in, and our staff as well. Our staff has not only been teaching from home prior to the summer, but they also had their own issues that they may have been, undergoing. So that is our number one goal here.
Thank you.
No problem.
Mr. O'Keefe and Mrs. Hines, one of the important questions that was asked this morning was about safety and about how kids are wearing their masks on the bus. They're getting off the bus and now they're walking into the building with their masks on, maybe a hood on, maybe a hat on. And they're not going to be as easily identifiable as they have in the past. One of the suggestions was to wear lanyards with maybe ID cards.
Right.
I'm just wondering what else, if there was any other suggestions, if there's, how are we going to, I mean, obviously health and safety is number
Right.
one concern.
Right.
That is a major concern of not being able to recognize kids, and especially ninth graders who are now new to the building. So we don't know
Yes.
any of them to begin with, and sixth graders that are now going in there.
Right.
So there's going to be a lot of unfamiliar faces, and even more unfamiliar with masks on.
Well, so not too unfamiliar, only because we do have our transition meetings for all fifth graders going into the sixth grade, and then all eighth graders going into the ninth grade. And we did those virtually over the past few months prior to the ending of school. So all teams at the high school level, in conjunction with their middle school and then middle school to elementary school, we met on every single student, not just some, but all. So they were able to physically see a picture of the student, talk about the student, all of those things. So we're hoping, right, that there are some familiar faces coming in. But like we had talked about this morning, the use of the student badges, we have never truly enforced the way that we need to now. But we would have to ensure that the students are maintaining that and showing that because they will be wearing masks as they come in. However, we are also spacing things out so the kids aren't coming into school in mass quantities. So should, in fact, prior to all of the badges coming out, you need to slip down just so we can kind of recognize you, put back up and go back in. I think we would feel safe and comfortable in terms of that. But we'll be working with our staff, working with security, and seeing what other measures that we can, put into place. John, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Just to
I think you
piggyback
covered
on
it all.
that, if we're going to have the
Yeah,
kids
it's
wear their ID cards.
Just a matter of how fast can we get the ID.
Yeah, that's the only thing, and that's why I say in the beginning we may just have to do the old-fashioned, put it down for a second so I can see. But our staff is pretty astute, and
Yeah.
granted, the ninth graders, we may not recognize them all, but we all, we know our students here, so that's
So I
worst
guess
case scenario.
obviously another concern would be now we have them wearing their ID cards. And of course, we all know that 10 to 15% of the kids are either going to lose them or forget them.
Yeah.
Do we have a mechanism to reprint them in the building daily so that everybody has one?
That I don't know. Do you have that, Patty?
Perfect. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
so just for the community, we are able to duplicate that. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trombetta.
Any other questions? Before we moved on, I just wanted to make sure that we at least took a poll of where we stand as on remote learning. Did we want to take a poll and leave it at 1 full year of a commitment? Did we want to talk about a half year? Did we want to talk about a quarter? I think it's important that we do it now so that we don't wait until last second and we're changing. Yes, Bill?
I understand what Rob was saying before about this. I'm just curious why it wouldn't be sufficient if we just changed the language to where we could evaluate if it were possible and had people understand that it could potentially be that
Sure.
long. But we could, of course, if situations allow, we can shorten it, truncate the time period.
Can I just ask a question to Mr. Block? I mean, just because I could foresee, I'm sorry, Jim, just because I could foresee something. Are we even legally allowed to tell somebody they're not allowed to come back? Like,
Well,
is
that's an unanswered question, and it's unprecedented from a legal standpoint. And I understand fully the operational issues. From a legal standpoint, you're going to want to see more flexibility because the concern is that the family will say that being denied my right to education. The response back is no, you're being educated remotely, but that's not the same type of education as an in-person education. So from a legal standpoint, I would recommend that there be some flexibility built in. I was actually going to state that if you were going to do that, still keep the year, but have a reevaluation, the ability to be able to reevaluate. As Ms. Hines said, that's going to occur on a student-by-student basis anyway if there's a concern from a parent. But parents are maybe being a little bit, I'm not saying misled, but not aware of the fact that there may be a reevaluation. That's a bit you may want to clarify, and you could do it in an interval period. You could do it, after the first quarter as a reevaluation, for example.
Yeah, I mean, one of my concerns would be is that they realize what remote learning entails, and they're like, this is not what I signed up for. We're not going live. We're not doing this.
Right.
And then we get an influx of kids, and now class sizes grow, and we don't have the space to have everybody in. So I want to make sure that we have that flexibility. I'm sorry, Jim.
Well, my position is, I like what Bill just said. My position was to get the true figures. The way it went out is probably the right way to go. So people aren't saying, well, I can experiment for a while. And we never really get a true picture. But at the same time, I think if the language was softened up to say the possibility of a full year is real. However, there's going to be independent cases that are changed, et cetera, et cetera. So we all know that. We all know that this could all change. But to get the true figure up front, I think they have to be aware that this could be a full year of remote learning. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I apologize. I don't have the survey in front of me. I think I said could be, but I don't recall. But we could certainly, again, put that out once we see the numbers. And if in fact we feel like maybe families felt a little bit, it was too strong and they're not really quite sure, we could send a call out. We could send out an email as quick as, now if we wanted to.
The reason why I asked that question is that we base that plan on every single student returning.
Yes, we did.
So the issue is not space. The issue is scheduling.
Yes.
That's correct, right?
Yes.
So I view it as,
Well, and because of the 6 feet, right, obviously space because of that.
but the 6 feet parameters is what allowed us to go to this plan to accommodate every kid if they should return.
Right. So if we don't have if not all kids return, then we will have more space, obviously, and then can bring back more kids.
So the thing is, like I said, the issue is not the space matter. The plan was devised based upon every single student returning. And that's why I suggested, maybe doing it once, 4 times a year. For that reason, I understand that it could be a nightmare scheduling.
Well, if the restrictions aren't lifted, I guess,
But
right?
if we have 13 kids in a 7th grade honors math class, and
Yes.
then we're looking at a schedule, you're going to look at the section, say, all right, put them in Mrs. Smith's class, or put them in.
Yes, correct. Yes.
So, the issue is that you have the space. It's just more of a scheduling thing. And I would imagine that if more and more kids come back from remote learning, we could reassign teachers to classrooms.
Yes, well, and that's the point, right? So in a year where we're already saying the curriculum's interrupted, the day's been corrupted, that's the only thing that we wanted to minimize in the beginning and get a true account, because you don't want to be moving teachers around and upheaving schedules, but we can, of course, always hand select and, put students in as outliers who really do need to come back. But we didn't want, and forgive me, I don't know who said it before, we just didn't want people thinking, I'm going to try it out for a week, and if I don't like it, I'll go, because that would be really challenging for us.
I'm not suggesting a week
Yeah,
or even
yeah.
a month. I'm
Right,
suggesting a quarter.
Right.
And that will give us enough time to do the planning and do the scheduling if we have to.
If we had to.
I just think that the 1 year, signing something that says 1 year is scaring the heck out of people, based upon the phone calls that I received today.
Okay.
So,
So I guess we'll have to then decide, are we doing flexibility? The flexible option obviously is the best for everybody, but do we want to say 1 year or do we want to say by quarter? And I guess we'll vote on that. So if you want to do a full year, write it with flexibility, you can vote on that. Full year flexibility. Yes. So we'll put our hands up and we'll count them. Full year with flexibility or flexibility with reevaluating every quarter. Okay, so, yes. But maybe we could what would be the best way to?
Well, yeah, I think that what I had suggested would be if you want to stay with the full year, but
Okay.
that you reevaluate on a quarterly basis.
Yeah, because I just caution us to, if we all of a sudden say flexibility, then people, we have to have a true account. School starts in
Yep.
2.5 weeks. And I don't mean to be crass about that, but we really do. And so I think, Mr. Block, the way that you had said it, I think, it's a year, but we would be reevaluating it throughout the
Is
year.
that good for everybody?
I like what he said. Yeah.
Does that mean that we're going to allow people to come in?
No. No, I don't think that you're going to make that full commitment. I don't think you can, quite frankly. Yeah. So I think that the concern was being raised was that parents under the impression that, no matter what I do, it's a year now. If I commit, it's a full year. That's not going to be the case. We're going to look at it on a quarterly basis. Again, it's changed. There could be, we could wake up tomorrow with an executive order, which states that
Could.
parents, can make the choice on a daily basis. So I think that what it's going to be is that the district will look at it. We're going to look at our operational needs. We're going to look at the parental needs and make, an informed decision. But that the benchmark be on a quarterly basis.
Would it help if we provided some sample language
Sure.
and then you're able to let us know if that language looks appropriate?
Is that good for everybody?
Because we can send that out, as quick as, Sunday evening or Monday morning for folks.
Perfect. Thank
All
you.
right.
Any other questions? All right, we are back in the agenda. Letter F, approval of minutes. Can I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Mancaruso, seconded by Meredith Opie. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion is carried. Number 2, we are in the visitors section, public comment that pertains to the agenda. I'm just going to need those cards. Or if you want to call them, it's fine too.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to call up the names. We do have several. I just wanted to make a reminder announcement that the visitor section, the public comment, is in fact a public comment. It's not a question and answer type of period. So I know that some of the cards that we are getting do have questions on them. I think possibly it's better, to.
If questions are asked, we can have them written down and we can take your email and we can have a response sent to you by email if that's good.
Or Mr. Picarello, if you want, we can also include them in our forum on Monday.
That's fine.
Right?
Yeah, I just think it would possibly be best to email or, speak with you separately regarding. Okay. So the first gentleman, Mr. Caputo. I'm sorry, Capuano.
Okay, my name is Mike Capuano. My daughter is Brooke Capuano. She goes to Sachem. You have an excellent school here, and you have an excellent school because you have the best teachers in the country, I believe. When you take the teachers away, you have a bunch of buildings here. Okay, to think that you're going to lock a child in a room with a bunch of books, and if you could fast forward 10 years that like a doctor or a lawyer is going to walk out of that room, it's just not going to happen. Okay. Now, the main reason that we're all here is the 6 foot, 6 foot, 6 foot, 6 foot. That's all we're here for. Why don't we tell everybody that that's a farce? If you build the partitions around the desk, the 6 foot is not necessary. And I called OSHA and I called the governor's hotline. Okay. If you build a glass partition, the teachers are worried also. I understand that. If you build a glass partition against the front, the teachers could walk in the back and they would be behind the partition. 7-Eleven protects their cashiers and they all come in when it's time for their shift and they're back there. Furthermore, the children could walk in behind their partitions and take their masks off. The teachers could be up there with the blackboards and take their masks off. And everything would be back to normal. This is all, we're all here because we're refusing to build the partitions. You could take that desk, there's schools that have taken that desk and they divide it like this, boom and boom, and there's 4 children on that desk. And it's totally legal. You can be, when you put a mask on, then, or any kind of petition, they said you could be nose to nose. I was just in a restaurant that was so packed, the booth, the person right behind me, I turned around, I was looking right in his face. I called the hotline from there and they said, as long as there's a petition, there was a petition in between the booths. And the petition was only this tall. I was looking in the guy's eyes and they said, there's no regulations for the height of the petition. Okay, so all we need is the petition and all this is gone. Okay, second of all, second solution, why don't you just have the people that want to come into school and the teachers that want to come into school come in, and the ones that want to stay home and the children that want to stay home, instead of forcing the ones that are horrified to come in, and the ones that are desperate to come back in. My daughter wants her teachers and she wants her school and she wants her friends. Okay. What if all the cops and firemen, and what if the truck drivers that supply the supermarket didn't come in? Everybody who needed to came in to help, and they kept America going. To my knowledge, the schools are the only ones that let us down. Now, as this gentleman said, these kids in 5 years, if we could fast forward to the ones that are starting now, they won't be able to read and write. I don't know how many people go to Europe, but our kids already can't read and write. We got kids in college that can't add. This is the death knell of America. This is not some small thing here that you're deciding. And there's no reason. These are guidelines. Schools all around you, Hop Hog, everything else, open 5 days. This is your decision to doom a generation. Right here, remember that. This is the beginning of the end of America. Okay, God, we hope that they rescind this, but if they don't rescind this, this few years here will be known as the COVID dummies. They won't make it into college. They won't do anything. And there's no reason. And anyway, lastly, I want to say, if you open the schools, why bother? The first kid or the first teacher that gets COVID, you're going to close all of Sachem. So this is all a farce. All this money, the reopening programs and everything, it's all a big farce. Okay, because this is being treated like the bubonic plague.
Mr. Capuano, I'm sorry, there's a 3-minute time limit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Studies all around the world have
Mr.
opened up and
Capuano.
proved that there's not one case. The YMCA tracked their own tracing, 40,000 kids, not one
Mr. Caprano,
outbreak.
thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you,
very
sir.
much for listening. And I want to say lastly, the governor said this is for us to talk, not 3 minutes. I listened to this young lady for 3 hours. That was not the guidelines. You're worried about guidelines. The governor said the people should be able to come in and talk, not listen to you guys tell me what to do with my child. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Mukatash, please.
Can I just start? Sure. Yeah. Hi, my name is Lauren Mukatash. I've been in Sachem for 13 years now. I have elementary age children. I'm going to jump the agenda. I'm sorry, hold the microphone. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to jump the agenda a little bit and go to item 12. There's been a proposal to create a diversity task force in Sachem Central School District. I'm here to voice my support for the creation of that task force. Sachem's student body is comprised of 25% racial minority students. Our E and L students represent a staggering 98 different languages spoken within this district of 13,000 students. Our students represent a multitude of cultures, religions, and abilities. Representation matters. Our multifaceted student body deserves to see themselves reflected in their teachers and administrators, in the books they have access to and read, and in the curriculum they are taught. So I would just plead with the board, please don't render this to a toothless subcommittee with no power. There are lots of things that I love about Sachem, and I think that this is a step in the direction to improve upon what we already have a strong foundation for. Thank you.
I'm sorry, next is Mr. Warren.
Hi, my name is Jason Warren. I'm a parent in the community, Sachem graduate. I would like to make a plea to the board. Please value and respect the school community by maintaining a high standard of transparency and communication at all times, but particularly in times of crisis. The communication from the central office and the board is unacceptable. It is essential for every member of the school community, students, teachers, and families, to be constantly updated at all times about every aspect of the reopening process. This meeting was not advertised to the school community at large. There were 5 parents outside, barely, and they left. Please, as soon as possible, communicate the following. Please communicate the following to the community immediately. How will we ensure that our remote students are receiving an equitable education? I can't accept that they will receive a subpar education. You've put in your email that I received while I was standing up front, says it will not be the same. I need it to be equitable. I need my child to get an equitable education. They need to be live instruction and ongoing assessment. We need to figure it out. We need to put programmers in place. We need to figure it out. It has to be figured out. We cannot make an exception where part of our school community is receiving a subpar education. It's not acceptable. Not acceptable to me, should not be acceptable to you, and is not acceptable to your teaching staff. I know that for a fact. Secondly, a building space plan must be made available to the parents of this community with individual room measurements and the capacity to maintain authentic social distancing at all times. And I need to know about the source of ventilation. I need to know what the school buildings look like. If you're telling me 17 kids in a classroom, I need to know that there's room for 42 square feet for every 17 one of those students. I need that in writing before I even think about sending my child back. I need clear opportunities for all parents to participate in this process. I shouldn't stumble upon this. I should be knowing about this weeks in advance. I need specific criteria for testing and tracing in all school buildings. I need a contingency plan for what happens when the rate of transmission rises above 3%. What do I do with my child? How do I make accommodations? I need to know these things before we put our kids on those buses. It's unacceptable that you're asking me to put a remote survey in place by Friday and your first parent meeting is on Monday. That's unacceptable. The parents need to know what's going on. The school community needs to know what's going on. The teachers need to know. Everybody needs to know. It's unacceptable. Please, I need you to do a better job of communicating with the school community. The most important details need to be related about our children's education in the future. Please address these issues immediately. The students, the teachers, the families in this community deserve at least this much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Favaro Campbell?
Hi, I'm Michelle Farr Campbell. I wanted to just address the board about the diversity task force. As all of you know, I started that email and requested that it be put on the agenda and that you all consider creating one. It's been 10 years that my daughter started, well, she's going to be a senior now. So 10 years ago, I actually started talking to a lot of district office, which is very changed now. Maybe Mr. Scavo might have been on the Board of Ed back then. I don't remember, but most of you were not then. It's been 10 years since my family started talking about having more diversity and representation within Sachem, and I'm really excited to see it finally make an agenda. I want to also make it really clear that it's about race, religion, and abilities. I want children in wheelchairs to see themselves in books in their classrooms. I want children with autism to know that they are just as represented as every other kid in every princess book, in every superhero story. And I want to help show our curriculum expand to teach children that kids with Down syndrome can be teachers, because there are stories of preschool teachers who have Down syndrome, and kids who are deaf and blind can grow up to graduate Harvard Law School and become disability advocates and travel the entire world. And right now, we just don't show that. We don't have the staff. We don't have diversity in our staff. We don't have diversity even in the books that they see when they walk into a classroom. So I just wanted to thank you all for putting it on the agenda tonight and for entertaining the idea, and to understand that it's actually bigger than one issue. It's about every kid at Sachem walking into their classroom, walking through hallways. And right now, I know reopening and dealing with COVID, but this has been 10 years, actually a little bit more, in the making. And Sachem's going to go on long before my daughter, who's going to be a senior, and my son, who's going to be a freshman in high school. They're going to be gone, and I don't want to leave that task force. Like, I want this to be 10 years from now, every kid who's just coming into kindergarten or the UPK program has a very different experience than what they had. And so that's really important to me that you all knew that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Sanders?
Hello, everyone. Oh, hello, everyone. Maria Sanders. I am a parent. I would like to just make a statement in respect to the reopening committee. I was a member of the reopening committee, and I just would like to express my disappointment in the fact that the committee had no part in the actual planning or process of the plan that was presented to the community. My understanding was that we would be part of that process, but instead we had 2 meetings where we were basically given the list of directives as administration and the Board of Ed had planned. So basically we got a sneak peek and the ability to ask a few questions. Though I certainly respect the time and effort and energy that administrators put in, and I will not take anything away from that, you failed to utilize the very volunteers that you asked for, because there was a tremendous amount of talent within that grouping, and we certainly could have helped you in putting together this plan. For myself, having students in middle school and high school, I recognize that this plan is not going to be adequate for them. And again, though I understand right now we're hoping that the testing standards are loosened, the value of a full-time education will not be. And these children cannot get a full-time education when they're in school 50% of the time. They're only seeing a teacher 50% of the time, and they're sitting home in front of a computer for the other 50%. That amounts to 10 days a month when normally they would be in school for 5 days a week. So I just ask that in the future, when you come to the community and you ask us to step up and come in and help, you really utilize us because our voice really has not been heard. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Williamson? Nicole Williamson? Okay. Miss Scalone?
Hi, everyone. I'm Josephine Scalone. I have a soon-to-be second and third grader. And I just have a question because I'm still undecided about the virtual versus going to actual school. If you go to school and you start in the school, do you have the option of then going virtual? Would that be an option?
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So we're, in this portion of the agenda, we're not allowed to do back and forth and answer questions. If you'd like, we can have your question written down and leave your contact, and we will answer any
it's all
question
there.
that you have. I can
Perfect,
promise.
thanks.
Thank you very much. Is it, Allison, is it on the card? Is there email on the card?
There's a phone number on the card. Do you want to put an email on here?
Perfect. Thank you so much.
The next one was also several questions. Would you prefer to contact this person as well?
I mean, he's been waiting, so if he wants to ask him, and then we can.
It's Miss Rapuano.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all for the first section.
Okay. We are on page 2 at the bottom, number 3. Business items, consent agenda A through C. Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Bill Coggin, second by Laura Slattery. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion is carried. Sorry. Bottom of page 3, personnel, consent agenda A through L. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Scavo, seconded by Mr. Coggin. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Mrs. Capolitan?
So this is an unusual way to welcome many of our new staff as we are having our first kind of live forum. Most of the time we have folks here to welcome them in person, and some of you are virtual. We would like to welcome all of our new staff that we vetted through really intense interview processes this summer with our administrative staffs in the building and staff members, faculty involved in the whole process. And that includes clerical, custodial, teachers assistants. And I think we have also gotten to the administrative section. Did I catch that correctly?
Not
Nope.
as of
Okay,
yet.
so we're through the L, and I just want to welcome those folks that are in consent agendas so far. Thanks.
Number 5 is support staff, consent agenda A through J. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Meredith, second by Jimmy and Caruso. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Kristen, did you want me to stop again?
Yeah, because I think we're.
You'd have Michael there.
Yep. Joining us today is Michael Lee Manuel. He is over here to my left, the far right, if you wanted to just stand and give yourself a wave. Michael is joining us today as the Network and Systems Administrator. He's been an integral part of our technology staff who have been working with Jack Renda in IT. We're really excited about all the great things that we're going to continue to get in the growth for our technology as we push through and put our smart schools investment through and enhance the use of our technology for our students and our staff. So welcome, Michael.
We are on the top of page 12, number 6, personnel administrators, consent agenda A through G. Motion by Mr. Scavo, seconded by Mr. Coggin. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Okay, would like to take a moment to recognize two other folks in the audience today. Joining us is Dennis McElhern. If you want to give a wave.
Ms. Cape-Lead?
Yep.
Not quite.
Sorry.
We're almost there.
I'm trying to stay on top of it here.
They're this close. This close. Sorry, guys. A little bit more suspense.
We're going to be towards the top of page 14, letter H. It's probationary appointment of the administrative personnel.
Here you go, Andy.
Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Coggins, second by Mr. Wadawa.
Discussion?
Discussion, sure.
I will be voting no on this and the next two personnel items. My reasons are the same as they've been for the past several board meetings concerning central administrative positions. That is, I believe the new superintendent should be part of the process in any administrative appointments. What I must make perfectly clear is that these candidates, as well as those from the prior meetings, are qualified and capable of the positions to which they are being offered, and I would fully support them if the new superintendent was part of the process. So this is a process negative vote and nothing to do with the personnel. The new superintendent is close. I mean, we're almost there, and we certainly have qualified staff who could perform these functions for a short time as interims. So that, for that reason and that reason alone, I'm voting no on the next three administrative positions. I must stress, it has nothing to do with the individuals. I fully support them and would support them in the future.
Mr. Kieran, just because you asked for a discussion and for the public and anybody at home, by losing our superintendent, our assistant superintendent, and our special ed director, we would have left three positions open where we would have needed interims. And just for argument's sake, Mr. O'Keefe, what is the going rate for an interim at that level per day?
For which position are we speaking?
Let's say it's the superintendent.
Rates vary, but a going rate for a superintendent is probably $1,200 to $1,300 a day.
And then what about the assistant super?
An assistant superintendent, depending upon which position, it could be $800 to $1,000 a day. And an executive director of special ed would also probably be in a similar range, a minimum of $800 a day.
So what, and I don't necessarily disagree with your argument, but what we did was we took a vote to have these positions filled. We had three people doing five people's jobs. And between losing that on a normal year is almost impossible, but losing it during COVID is impossible. And we put things into motion to have these positions filled by qualified people to save that money. And this is money that, I mean, we already just talked about taking custodians off that we don't even know if buildings are going to get cleaned in time. Now we want to take more money out by filling these positions with interims. I think that that's a slippery slope if we go down that path.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying. My position is that a superintendent of schools is the single most important person in the district and totally accountable to us and the district for making decisions. And to have a superintendent of schools not part of the process, even though a new superintendent come in and doesn't know the personnel, is certainly going to ask the qualified people who they are and do some and be part of the interview process. I think that's even more important than the saving of a few dollars here and there. But that's, I mean, I see I'm alone in that position, but I stand by it.
I understand where you're coming from. If we don't appoint somebody until September 1, that's a long period of time at $1,300 a day, $800 a day. And while it seems like a few dollars here and there, over a 3-month period that we haven't had people, that it starts to add up. And when we need money down the line, I would be afraid that we put it on interims when we had qualified people who could take these positions immediately.
I will remind you of your fiscal prudence soon.
Okay.
Alex, just because we're having a discussion, so Mr. Kiernan, the people that we're appointing tonight, I have personally known all of them, so it's without hesitation that I think that they are the best fit for Sachem. I don't care who our superintendent is. I've trusted Mr. O'Keefe as our interim superintendent to make the recommendations, and I 100% agree that any superintendent coming in will not find any better candidates than the ones we're putting forth tonight.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Do you?
Dennis, we're going to start with Andrew Larson. So Andrew, just want to welcome you to the high school North principalship. Andy has been a teacher in our schools. He's been in personnel. He's been in an elementary Hiawatha principalship, a Sagamore principalship, an AP in 2 of our high schools. And now he's joining the ranks of the leadership in North, and we'd like to welcome you and wish you all the best. Congrats.
We are on letter I, probationary appointment of the Executive Director for Special Education. Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Mr. Scavo, seconded by Mr. Coggin. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Dennis McElhern, he's welcome back to Sachem. He has been in our school district working as a school psychologist, an assistant to coordinator for special education. He left for a short stint to go over to North Bab as a director over there, and we're really lucky to have him back and part of our team as the executive director for special education. Welcome back.
And letter J is an approval of an SAA agreement for the Executive Director for Special Education. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Ms. Slattery, seconded by Ms. Volpe. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We are on the bottom of page 14. Contracts, consent agenda A through T. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Coggin, second by Mrs. Wadawa. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We are on the bottom of page 20. It's an action item. It's number A, mandated New York State Board training for Matthew Bauman and Robert Scavo. All in favor? Okay, can I have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Volpe, second by Mr. Mancaruso. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number B, it's an appointment of board committee members. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Ms. Slattery, second by Mr. Scavo. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Letter C is a Board of Education retreat. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Ms. Wadawa, second by Mr. Bauman. All in favor? Any questions? Sure.
I just want to make a quick comment, especially since we're being fiscally prudent. A retreat is not like gurneys or something. It's where we all sit in a room and talk. I just want to make sure that that's clear because
We are not going on vacation. There'll
because
be
my
no
first
food,
year I
there'll
was
be no beach
prepared for
there.
gurneys and then we sat in the Samoset Library. So.
Yeah. Thank you. We are on the top of page 22. Sorry. I apologize. Can I, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. The top of page 22, donations, consent agenda A through C. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Coggin, second by Ms. Wadawa. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 10, at the bottom of page 22, Committee on Special Education, consent agenda A through B. Motion by Ms. Volpe, second by Mr. Mancaruso. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 11, monthly reports. So there was a question from the community about when the committees would start meeting and how. I think that maybe if people that were leading these committees would want to maybe set some dates, we could do something virtually. I'd like to see the budget committee start talking about if there was a possible mid-year cut and look into any and all options that there was. I don't know if there was anything else that you may want to look into, but that's just one that I thought of. I don't know about the legislative committee if Mr. Kiernan has anything for the legislative committee. No. Okay. All right. Number 12, we are back on public comment. This portion of the public comment will be on any and all items that anybody wants to speak at that's not on the agenda. And everyone will have 3 minutes to discuss. And like we said before, this is not a Q&A and a back and forth, but we do want everyone to be able to be heard that wants to be heard.
Okay, the first one is Miss Young.
Press this.
Yes. Thank you for waiting for so long. I know
Thank
that you
you.
guys have been outside.
Dear Sachem Board of Education members and community, it has come to my attention that VP Sarah Waterworth wore a Yep. Okay. Okay. Wore a BLM t-shirt at a Board of Education meeting. This is unacceptable. I can respect a person's right to free speech and to have their opinion. However, BLM is a political movement and it does not belong at our Board of Ed meetings or in our schools at indoctrinations. The definition of a racist is paramount in the name of Black Lives Matter. The name indicates that Black Lives Matter over the other races. This is unacceptable and this racism does not belong. Including the BLM is putting itself over our law enforcement, which many of our community are employed and of all races. This once again making BLM a Black organization. Furthermore, New York Attorney General James ordered Black Lives Matter Foundation to cease solicitations of New York donations they have not registered as a charitable organization. We do not know whether the BLM t-shirt that was worn was for the Black Lives Foundation or movement. In either case, it has no right. If any one of the board members wore my hat supporting Trump, I'm sure the same thing would happen. The apology that was put on Facebook was cynical and scolding, calling us all racist and insisting BLM is not a political issue. Last I checked, everyone in America had the same rights regardless of race, sex, color, and sexual orientation. If specific cases of discrimination are happening in our community, then we must address those issues. What offended me is the use of rap music before sporting events, glorifying women's degradation, drug use, and the cursing and the songs with the word "N" in it. This is not acceptable. If we are going to talk about discrimination, it's got to be used both ways. So let's start by banning that. BML, not political? Tell that to the murdered Black Trump supporter Burnell Trammell. Furthermore, the disgusting political use of BLM as an attack on our police and blue lives is not acceptable. Our community of all sects and races is made up of law enforcement. BLM is declaring war against all Blue Lives Matter.
Ms. Young, there's a 3-minute time limit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Young, thank you very much.
Ms. O'Connell?
Mr. O'Connell, thank you very much for waiting. I know that it's been a while.
Okay, well, I am beyond angry at what is going on with our children. Okay, we are not doing the right thing by our children in any way, shape, or form at this point in time. Whether we want to send our children to school or keep them home. Neither of those options currently are acceptable.
I sent every one of you board members an email. I got one reply. I challenged every one of you board members to go and spend 10 minutes in one of the classrooms on the first floor and the second floor of one of the high schools. Did any of you do that? Yeah, I didn't think so. Yet, you all think it's fine, obviously, that we have no ventilation in the classrooms. For crying out loud, we have to have special ventilation in the malls and other businesses. But where our most vulnerable are, we don't? None of you would work in these classrooms in the current conditions. None of you. So why would you think it's okay for our children to be in there? Even before this, but definitely now. Now the air in those classrooms just stands there because there's no movement, there's no nothing. And COVID will stand in the air until it falls down on somebody. So you're putting our children in an environment that is guaranteeing that if somebody has COVID, it's going to get on all the rest of them. It's horrendous. It's despicable. And now I'm hearing that remote learning is going to be a joke. That's not okay either. Okay, I don't want my child in one of those rooms. I want my child safe. But my child is taking 5 AP classes next year, which means he needs a robust distance learning program. But my understanding is we're not doing that. Am I incorrect? No. Okay, so what we're doing to our children is despicable. And you should all be ashamed of yourself.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connell.
And by the way, Alex, I want the name and number for the lawyer.
Just a second, Mr. Block. Just a second, Mr. O'Connell. I'll get your answer question right now. I had a conversation with him.
How are you? Yeah,
No,
no, I know
we
that
can-
you were asking the question about the being restricted in terms of the assembly.
Yeah.
But it's pursuant to the governor's executive order, one of the number of
Which one?
executive orders, 202.45.
I believe I looked at that one, and that was talking about social.
Mrs. O'Connell, I'm just going to ask you to back up just a little
Yeah,
bit, just so we
yeah.
can keep our space.
No,
That's
it
all.
talks about non-essential gatherings. And
And
that's,
this is not essential?
that's correct. As long as while we're virtual, because you still have the option of being virtual, the board decided to assemble.
Oh, so you guys decided this was not essential? So
No,
because you
the
decided it's
governor-
not
No, that's
essential?
not, no, they don't decide. No, that's not.
So who decides?
Well, that's based upon the governor's orders.
The governor said that this is a non-essential?
The governor
meeting?
said that we can conduct this meeting virtually, or you
Oh,
can.
yes, you can.
Yes,
But
yeah.
because
So as
you-
long as you can conduct it virtually, meeting is considered to be non-essential because you have the ability to be able to conduct
I'll
it
go to his
virtually.
office tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
And what
Thank
number
you.
is that?
Mr. Block.
Mr. O'Connell, we'll
Yeah.
get you the number if
The
you want.
number 202, whatever.
202.45. It was extended by 202.53, and it's in effect until August 20th.
Okay.
Ms.
Thanks.
Fury?
This is an essential meeting. It shouldn't be under that.
Good evening. I'm a proud Sachem educator and a parent of 3 daughters who attend Sachem schools. I'm here tonight to voice my concerns regarding the secondary reentry plan. I have a daughter in 8th grade, and I also have a senior. I have grave concerns regarding the lack of an equitable education for our secondary students. These children will suffer the ramifications of this decision, in which they will only receive 50% of the curriculum for years to come. In some instances, this decision may change the course of their adult lives. I don't want that to happen to my children, and I don't want it to happen to anyone else's. I implore you to reconsider this plan and attempt to find a way to make the secondary reentry plan more equitable so that our Sachem students can receive 100% of the curriculum that they are entitled to, just like our elementary students. Thank you. That's all.
Page 23, board discussions. The first one we put on today was an adoption of the 2021 calendar. There was a talk of a change, Mr. O'Keefe.
It's just, something I want to bring to the board's attention, because obviously administration has been meeting with district administrators as well as our teachers, looking at the opening of school and just trying to be sure that we can be as prepared as possible for whatever that is. Other districts have taken a look at this and also chosen that option. Each year, a district is allowed up to 4 superintendent's conference days. Our current calendar has 3. The first 2 are in September. The September 2nd and 3rd days are superintendent's conference days. And the third one would be on Election Day, November 3rd. We've been discussing the possibility of having the board consider the 9th, which is Wednesday, 8th, which would be the first day of school for students, to be a 3rd superintendent's conference day in September. That way it would give staff, teachers, administrators, everything, all the time that they need to be sure if there are those last minute tweaks, changes to classroom setups, changes to schedules, assignments, whatever the case is. I had a lengthy conversation with Mr. Barbera last night. His guidance counselors are ready to dive in to do whatever work needs to be done to make our secondary experience as good as possible, but we need the data first. So once we have that data, we can dive in on this. We don't have much time, and time is not on our side. So for your consideration, we'd like to talk about adding the 8th as a superintendent's conference day.
Would we have to remove another day off the calendar for that?
We would just convert that day to a I wouldn't alter the calendar right now. Other than that, obviously, since the year hasn't even begun, it still keeps us within legal limits. It still leaves us the flexibility if we were to have a severe winter. Maybe with the new reality of our ability to switch between distance learning, maybe that can even help us, in bad storms and things like that, where we might be able to turn something like that on and not lose instructional time. But I think giving the staff that extra time, especially since we're down to the wire, could be helpful. Now, on the counter side, obviously families are already starting to make plans. They're ready to send kids back on the 8th. They've already made decisions. They've arranged childcare, whatever the case is. So it isn't just as simple as you deciding, let's readopt a calendar. And maybe it's not even something you do tonight. Maybe it's something you consider, you think about, and maybe it's on the next agenda for the 26th. But I wanted to bring it to your attention to give you some time to think about it and talk about it. Is it a possibility where we could consider that day for additional staff planning?
Does anybody have a question about the calendar?
I'm just thinking we're going to make this decision. We have to make it tonight, so parents do have enough time to make arrangements.
Mr. Baumann?
Can you, what kind of professional development day would it look like? What would it look like?
Well,
would it be a useful day for the teachers? To
it's not Ms. Hines can speak better to the professional development days. None of them are going to be like the normal professional development days.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean professional development. Superintendent's Day. Would it be a day that the teachers would be able to kind of get their stuff together? And
Yes, as we've been saying, our teachers have been working hard all summer, ongoing professional development. This is really more honored space for them so they can continue to clean up, get things ready, make sure the Google Classrooms, all of their lessons are in place. So not our traditional, ed camp style superintendent's conference days, but we recognize that it's a tremendous amount of work to get started.
Does anybody have any other questions? Did anybody want to vote on it tonight, or did? Yep, Mr. Scott.
Was the request made by the staff to have that extra data to get ready?
It came through a conversation. Administration and staff have asked for it.
So I agree with Sarah. The earlier the better. And if the
I would
request
agree
is
as
to get
well.
them back, I would be okay with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
We can vote on it right now. All right. Motion to change the calendar to the 8th being a staff development day, seconded by Ms. Volpe. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The calendar is
We'll
adopted.
get that information out to families as quickly as possible.
The next item up for discussion is future board letter writing. This is something that I personally put on. I don't think that we should be putting letters out to the community with all of our names on it, if we don't agree with what it says. And I could be in the minority on that, but I would be fine with writing a letter, putting spaces underneath, and letting those who agree do it. Now, most times it's a 9-0 and there's no issues. But, I personally didn't agree with the letter that got put out. And if my name is going to be on it, especially admonishing another board member, I have to agree with it. And that's just the way I personally feel about it. I understand that we're a body, and I get that. But at the end of the day, it's our name, and we have to put our head on our pillows. And if we don't agree with something, I want everyone to have the freedom to not only say that, but be able to live with the decisions that are made, and to be able to stand up to the community and say, here, I did this or I did not do this, and have a straight face when you say it. I didn't agree, and it's my fault for, ever putting my name on that piece of paper. So I want to put it from here on out. If anyone has an issue, please feel free. But if whatever letter it is, we write the letter, our names are on the bottom, and we can sign the letter if we agree with it. If we don't, we take the space away, and then you don't have to sign it if you don't want to. But at least you can make your own decision, and you don't have to feel like you're beholden because maybe it's only 5 people who agree with it, and 5 out of the 9 agree, and now all of a sudden it's a board decision, and your name goes on it no matter what. Jim?
So, how do you determine whose name's going on it? Suppose 4 people went the letter out. Is that sufficient to send a letter with 4 names?
That's why it's up for discussion. So I don't
All right,
know
so
how
it's
I would-
got to be a majority to even have the letter go out. So 5 members have to support it. And then let's suppose it's a 5-4. The letter does go out. Board of
only the 5
Education
people.
and the 5 members who agree with it sign it.
That's
I'm
how
good
I
for
would
that.
foresee that. in
I'm
the
good for
future.
that.
If anybody had an issue with that, I just wanted to address it tonight so that we haven't had a chance to get all together in a room with.
So let me ask a question on the opposite end of the spectrum. If 4 people want to put a letter out and it's a 4-5 board, are the 4 people able to put a letter out? Because when you sign up for the Board of Education, you sign up as a group, okay, and you vote as a group, okay. And hey, listen, there are things that happened in the past where I was on the no side of a vote where I got dragged to the mud, but I signed up for that.
Yeah.
So my impression is that 5 is a majority, and it's what moves resolutions, and it's what moves, different initiatives and so on and so forth. So I think the easy way to do that is that when you're getting attacked by a community member, okay, because of what the letter says, your response is, look, the board majority voted on it. I don't necessarily agree with it. If you have concerns, please contact the rest of the board. And that's how we leave it.
Just my personal opinion, and this I happen to disagree only because when we passed, let's just say the new principal for Sachem North, in the minutes, it will reflect that Jim voted no. It's not going to vote that yes, we voted yes, but if you go look in the back to it, Jim can say I said no, and he could say anybody to the community, and here's why I voted no, and he could put his head on his pillow and he's fine. Like, it will not reflect that I said no. And just like I think it's wrong that you get dragged through the mud on stuff that you voted no for, and you can't even back it up because there is no record of you ever saying no unless you look through certain things on votes. Yeah, but if it's a letter, there's no record of anybody saying no.
But if the letter's coming from the Board of Education, is it coming from the Board of Education or is it coming from 5 board members?
So
I guess my point is I don't think we should be writing any letter that's admonishing another member. I mean, most letters are in agreement to the state saying we need our funding, to the state saying we don't agree with certain things that they're doing, but we should certainly not be, or.
So, and maybe Mr. Block, you can answer this. When we get elected to the Board of Education, my voice means nothing more than anybody sitting out there. My voice only means 1 as part of us 9. I have no say. I can't decide anything. I have no more decision-making than my neighbor next door. My only input or influence comes as a board of 9. So the letters that we had done previously, like supporting our seniors graduating in person, or the denouncement of Betty DeVos as the education, or denouncing racism, that was issued as a board, not as me as an individual. So I think legally, Mr. Block, if you could just give us some guidance here, that when the Board of Education of Sachem School District issues a letter, I think it has to come from the board. If Laura Slattery, who lives in Wisconsin, wants to send a letter to Governor Cuomo, then I sign my name Laura Slattery, not Laura Slattery, Sachem Board of Education trustee. And that's, I feel that me on this board, I'm not a Republican, Democrat, independent, anything. I am representing a community of 55,000 registered voters. My personal opinions or anything I feel personally does not matter when I'm sitting here with the nine of us. My only thing that I can do as a board trustee is as a majority of this board, unless legally you see something. That's how I feel. I was elected by the voters. I was elected by my Sachem community. I feel like I have to represent my Sachem community as one of 9, not as Laura Slattery individual.
And of course, I don't think that's being suggested, but we're a governing body, and every governing body around the country operates that way. You operate as a body. You're elected to be part of this body. You make decisions as a body. There may be differences of opinion. That's part of our democracy. That's what makes our country great. You be able to express those opinions. At the end of the day, you have to make a collective decision, and then you have to abide by the decision that that body makes. One possible solution is that if you are going to issue a letter and there's concerns that dissenting members' vote is not going to be known, like it is when we take a public vote, you can take a public vote to send the letter. And then you could adopt that letter as a majority vote. Those who dissent are on, as a matter of record, they're on record if that's the case.
So you're saying that no one member is allowed to remove their name from a letter?
I would say that that's not typical practice that you would see.
But is
quite frankly.
it legal for a member to remove a name?
Well, when your letter is going out, I don't think it typically sets forth all the names. I don't know what your letter said. Has it printed all your names?
On the left side, it says there's a list of all the names, and on the bottom, it's the president's name. So on the left
Right.
side of the letter, it has all of our names listed.
Yeah, but that's your letterhead, right? That
Yeah.
lists all your names. It doesn't indicate whether or not you voted for that letter to go out or not. You're represented on that letterhead. It's an official Board of Education stationery. That's why your name is on there. It's not signaling that you voted for that or not. But the recognition is, though, that when you do take a vote or when the board puts out material, that's
So
the
that's
vote
a
of the
fine.
entire vote.
That's a compromised decision. I think that any and all letters should be discussed in public and voted in non-public.
If that is a concern that you have,
Jim?
that's one way of addressing it.
Yeah, I was just going, I was just going to
apologize.
say that sounds like an excellent idea. And that really just goes back to, like you said, about my vote, is on record, and 8 votes are on record for these fine individuals here. So that would be the same thing. We discuss a letter, we take a vote on it. If it's a majority vote, the letter will go, but the dissenters are also in the minutes. I like it.
And I'm 100% in agreement with that. This way, it's a public discussion. Anybody can look back, but then we still are issuing a letter based on a majority of the board.
Yep, but as long as there's a record of who votes yes and who votes no, I'm
Correct.
fine with
I
that.
am 100% fine with that.
Just one statement, and me and Laura have gone round and round about this before, but I want to make this point. Look, we're all elected members to this board, as any elected official is. If I want to write a letter and I want to sign my letter, Bill Coggin, Board Trustee Sachem, I'm 100% within my rights to do that. It's a matter of opinion as to whether or not I should do that. If I want to get together with 4 other board members and each one of us want to sign it as board trustees, once again, we are within our rights to do that. All right. It may be perceived as a bad idea by this board, but there's nothing illegal about it.
Okay. And it's not a vote I don't think we're going to take here. I just wanted to make sure that we discussed it and there was at least a public, so that all future letter writing is done in public.
And just to add to it, it's been customary that at the bottom of the letter, the signature block states the president's name on behalf of, just sign the letter, sincerely, the Sachem Board of Education, and not place the president's name on the bottom of the letter.
Yeah. Okay. The last item up for discussion is the Diversity Task Force.
So as you guys know, I gave you guys all an outline about what?
Just get a little bit closer.
Sorry. I gave you all an outline probably in the end of July, and I don't know if you all got a chance to look it over.
Yeah, I shared it with the board again the other day, Sarah.
So I would just like to make a motion to put it on, to vote tonight on establishing this task force.
Yeah, I mean, my only issue is, and I don't have a problem with this diversity task force, but the way community committees are usually done is that we could vote to establish one, give direction to administration to come back as to what the charge is going to be, talk about the charge, and then approve it. I would say that that's probably the route we should go. And in the years that I've been on the board, we established construction capital projects committees, and some are established for one specific job, and then they disappear. And that was for one of the construction projects that we did. After that, we didn't do any for a while, so we didn't need that organization. But I would just say that we either vote on it tonight. Yes, we want to pursue something like this. We understand what the end game is, what we're trying to achieve, and then normally what would happen is administration would put together a packet, a pamphlet that's made available to the community. They could download it in a PDF format. People would sign up for it, to submit in the same way they would for a budget advisory committee, or any other committee. So I would just say that we follow that format, and we're not adopting exactly word for word this, but we're establishing a diversity task force and charging administration to come back to us with what the charge is going to be. I would have no problem with that.
Any questions? Everyone? All in favor of?
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I read the whole thing like lots of times. I think it's great. We need to hear it, Sachem.
All in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? Motion's carried.
Mr. Picarello, there's still one visitor that we had called, wasn't here at the time.
Please.
Miss Williamson.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. I'm sorry. I know that it's late.
I apologize. I was doing yard work and I was listening.
Thank you.
And I had to come. So I apologize. This is my first time doing anything like this, so I really don't have anything written out or able to look up anything outside. So I'll tell you about myself. I have 4 children, 3 at Hiawatha, 2 of them with severe nut allergies, and 1 of them with viral-induced asthma. I don't really know. Well, let me just go with this. My kids are fine. They will be homeschooled, and they will be homeschooled well. What about all the other children that aren't as lucky as my kids? How come nobody is talking about them? How come nobody's talking about the children getting hit at home? How come nobody's talking about the children that aren't eating at home? How come nobody's talking about the children that aren't learning or being sexually abused at home? Nobody cares about those kids. I hear a lot of things, how we're emptying the rooms and there's going to be nothing in there. No one's allowed to touch each other. No one's allowed near each other. We're teaching our kids to be scared. I was scared for a long time. I've been hurt. I've been scared of allergies and a nut killing my child. Fear cannot run us. We need to stand up for who we are and what we believe in. And I believe all our children deserve a fair chance at life, and we are not giving it to them. I think that's it.
Thank you very much. I know that you waited a while. Thank you.
Thank you.
Letter C is Board of Ed discussion, future agenda items, future discussion items, excuse me. Does anyone have anything future to talk about? Covered 3 tonight. Okay. The next meeting, I don't know if that's the right date. That's today.
No, the 26th.
Okay, is August 26th. We're hoping to still be here at 7:30 p.m. Can I have a motion to move into executive session? Yeah, no, we need a reason. Mr. Block?
I don't know what you could be discussing.
We're discussing, we're discussing,
Property.
yes, property. I'm sorry. It lost me for a
A
second.
real estate transaction.
Yes, real estate transaction. Can I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Coggins, second by Mr. Baumann. All in favor? Meeting is good. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night. Be careful going home.